One. And we are live. Welcome to the Hippest Trip on YouTube. So excited you could make it. Very, very excited. We are going to be dealing some good feeling tonight because we are going to get into near-death experiences. We got all the answers you've ever wanted to know. You don't need to go anywhere else because we've got every answer, every one of them. So don't worry about it. We're going to discuss it all. We got some fun guests hopefully coming on later tonight. But I know you guys have been waiting to talk about this because we have talked about near-death experiences before on the show. And especially the Mandela show nights, we've kind of dove in deep on sometimes. But it's interesting because I keep finding more and more people that had near-death experiences. My next guest, she just wants to go by Penny. Penny is one of those guests who had an amazing near-death experience. And we're going to talk about what she saw on the other side and what happened. And I bet some of you guys watching, maybe this sounds familiar, or because I do know a lot of people have had near-death experiences that watch this show. They've told me. So I'm pretty excited about that. We are going to dive into that. So if you have your own near-death experience, feel free to hit the chat box and drop some details about it and wonder how much of it crosses over. Because it's one of those things that people say when they die that they have very similar experiences. It's also kind of reminds me of when people take psychedelic drugs, that like DMT, they all talk about how they have the same sort of experience from all over the planet, which makes you kind of think, well, maybe they are seeing the truth in the other side. How could all these people have this same experience for ancient times? Like you can go back and look, and people are describing and what they see in near-death experiences hundreds of years ago, before we had the interwebs. So I'm pretty excited. So here's what we're going to do is I am now going to introduce my new friend Penny. Penny, go ahead and give us about 2 or 3 minutes about who you are, because you are an author and you write some books. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into the near-death experience.
Okay. Well, my name's Penny, of course, and I'm working on my own book. It's called A Life Reclaimed, and it's just kind of what I learned during my near-death experience. And I'm also a contributing author on 2 other books. There's a book coming out by Dr. Penny Sartori and Kelly Walsh called The Transformative Power of Near-Death Experiences, and I have a chapter in that book, and I have editing credit in that book, and that comes out in November. It's in pre-sales on Amazon now. And the other book is Karen Swain's book, or Karen Swain, as she prefers to be called. And it's just escaped me what it's called. I'll look it up here in a minute.
That's okay. We've had Karen on the show lots of times, and for the life of me, it is so hard to say Karen. I'm so used to Karen, and I got scolded for saying it to her, and she slapped me on the wrist, and I had to go sit in the corner for a while. They put the little cap on, and I was like, man. So every once in a while it slips out. Yeah, she's ruthless. She's ruthless.
I'm scared of her. That's why I said I'd write a chapter, because who could say no?
That's it. It's like the Dawn. She just comes in, she's stroking the cat. She's like, one day you're gonna owe me a favor, and I'm calling it in. And so, Karen, if you're listening, I know that's how it goes down. This is how you get people to write your books.
She's like Star Wars, you will write this chapter for my book.
You're like, okay, I'll write this down. So when is that book?
I just recently saw that movie, so I now get those jokes.
Are you kidding me? Really? You never saw Star Wars until recently?
No, Don made me see it, and I was like, that's actually good. I like that.
What's it like to be our age and never have seen Star Wars? Because when I was a little kid, man, there's very few things like it. Like Star Wars was such a big deal. It was like, man, did you see the special effects? And then, oh my God, the spaceships. And I watched it. This was back in theaters, right? I watched it in '79 as a little kid, and this tells you how much times have changed. My mom, now I'm talking like I'm like 7 years old or something, just drops me off at the theater. Is like, I'll be back at the end of the day. I watched Star Wars 5 times by myself, like me and this other kid that was probably like 8. We sat in the theater all day, watched this movie over and over. We were just so impressed with the special effects. So the first time I watched it was like a marathon over and over. And then we got done, and my mom was like, hey, how was it? It was like, oh man, this guy got his arm cut off by like this light blade. It was awesome. We're like little kids, and just explains how, wow, when times were so much different that you could just, you know, like now that would be like child abuse, right?
Right.
How dare you leave a 9-year-old or, you know, an 8-year-old kid or whatever by himself in a theater, you know, that was like so normal back then, right?
I remember spending the whole day at the mall at like 10. So
Wow, yeah. Do you remember that? The
yeah, I
mall was a
do.
deal too, that you would go and oh man, because what would happen is, you know, as a little kid, I'm like rolling quarters trying to get a few, and I'd go to there and go to the video arcade, and I would spend everything I had in like 10 minutes, and then be like, okay, I got 4 more hours to kill in this mall. What am I gonna do? You know? And we try to sneak into a movie once in a while. We could get away with it, but normally we got caught. And yeah, it was like, I remember you just have no self-control as a kid. You'd spend all your money right away.
Yeah. Well, we went and saw it. Don and I went and saw. It was so funny. We went and saw Star Trek. I had never seen Star Trek, so we went out like when this newest.
Where did you grow up? No Star Wars or Star Trek?
Well, they did. I just wasn't into
Were you
sci-fi.
like Amish or something? Were you on a farm when you grew up?
No, no.
Did you escape from a compound? What? How did?
Now you've got it.
How did this
Yeah,
happen?
my secrets that they're going to find me.
Either of these critical movies in our generation, I don't understand. Okay,
It's funny to see them as an adult because when we went to see Star Trek, we're sitting there and we get like an hour into the movie, and I lean over and I said, "Don." Now we're watching Star Trek. I said, "Don." He says, "What, babe?" I said, "When is Chewbacca going to be here?"
in Star Trek, did he just be like, "It's coming, baby, it's coming. Just wait"? Like, what type of answer is that?
He's so sweet. He's like, "Sweetheart, that's Star Wars." And I didn't even realize they were two different movies. I said, "Wait a minute, they're two different movies." And well, that's like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Really?
Like, I don't know which one, but wait, which one? Wait.
Okay.
Who's the gray-haired guy in Lord of the Rings? The wizard guy.
That would be Professor Dumbledore.
Oh no, that's no.
No, it's Gandalf. I'm just messing with you.
Right. So Voldemort is the one that's in. Wait, no, Dumbledore. See, I don't know. The same damn movie. I don't know.
You're a mess. All right, so let me go back to this. What is it like seeing these movies that were such a big deal when we were kids now? Because now, you know, you can see TV commercials that have way better special effects than Star Wars. Like, is it still hold the same magic where you're like, wow, this is really good? Or were you like, it's all right. Let's go watch American Idol.
I watched them because I loved Don. But like the new one I liked. And like the first one, I didn't care for the second one, but I liked the one with the girl on the ship. I can't remember what that all is, but I like that.
Yes, the one they're on the spaceship. That narrows it down. Okay, yeah.
Well, no, remember there was the girl and she was the heroine in the whole thing. What? Star Wars.
Star Wars. Okay. Were there like was this
Don
the
from
Star
the
Wars
coaching me?
Was this the Star Wars out of the 80s, or was it the Star Wars that was
the recent
that we don't
one,
talk about?
He made me watch the old one.
Okay, so you saw the one with like the puppets and stuff.
Yeah, I think I fell asleep, and then, but I mean, I got the general idea, and it was good to watch most of it because I got some of the humor from the new one. I know it's.
Your poor husband. Okay, we're just gonna go shift gears here for a bit because I was gonna be like, oh, what do you think about the Mandela effects in the Star Wars movies? But yeah, that's probably not gonna happen, dude, because you're gonna be like, well, Mr. Spock is different in the Star Wars movies. Yeah, okay, yeah, go with that. Spock definitely is different in the Star Wars movies.
And Chewbacca's not even in Star Trek. What the hell?
Yeah, Chewbacca doesn't fit the Star Trek uniform well. No, he does not wear it well. Oh, okay. Let's get down to back to where we're at, because I thought this was going to lead somewhere, but obviously we're just
it's going nowhere.
We're just this is. I get it. Much like most of my conversations, just right.
Now you know Don's pain.
I do. He's a tough man. He's a tough man. Okay, so let's get
Star Wars: The Force Awakens. What does that mean?
Oh, okay. That's the
saw?
Yeah, that's the reboots that they made.
That's what we saw.
They're okay. I mean, you know,
I liked it better than the old ones.
Probably, yeah. It probably moves a little faster than the old ones.
Well, you
The
have
reason,
emotional attachment to the old ones.
right, because you got to remember, we saw this as kids, and we never seen anything like it. It would be like the first time you saw
Yeah.
Jurassic Park or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, there's dinosaurs on the screen. They look so real. Or I
Yeah.
remember Terminator 2, where like the dude was liquid. And you were like, whoa. Or, like when you never seen those special effects. But now it's like you see a candy bar commercial and those special effects are in them. And you're like, oh, yeah, dancing candy bars that, can use liquid
Right.
metal. So it doesn't quite have the same effect.
It does.
I don't know. And what's weird is I don't know what's coming where people are going to have that emotional attachment. Like maybe there's some sort of virtual reality movie coming one day that you're in the movie and you'll be like, man, that was incredible. But I don't know what they could wow us with at this point that I would be like, have
Oh,
the
I don't
same sort
either.
of, yeah, because they try to limp along 3D movies that are like, it's all right. I don't know
But
why the
I
hell I
thought
spent $40 on popcorn. Huh?
we were talking the other day, and I said I would have just how far technology's come in the last 10 years is so huge. I wouldn't have believed you could do this sort of thing,
Yeah.
10 years ago and have people join. So I think it's probably endless.
Well, I always pictured, I know in one of my books I wrote, I write fiction too, I did, that I just assumed everything would be like little hollow chambers where, you'd walk in and it would be holograms that would look real in front
Right.
of you doing stuff out. So maybe that's going to be the one that wows us. I don't know.
That would be cool. I'd go see that.
Yeah, that's it. It'll eventually, it'll get there one of these days.
It'll get there.
Wow, we went around in circles. So let's talk about near-death experiences, and then we will try to figure out if that has any connection to the Mandela Effect. And we're going to talk about that because I know some of you guys tuning in, we have talked about the Mandela Effect in near-death experiences. There are some theories going around that perhaps there was a mass extinction event and a bunch of us slid over into another reality and we're living it out because, like, why are only some of us awake? And why do some of us have the same memories from another reality? Or maybe there were multiple mass extinction events because I feel like a bunch of us slid over from slightly similar realities. We have some of the memories, but not all the memories. So we're going to dive in deeper into that topic in the second half. But at first, I want to know what Penny saw on the other side. So Penny, why don't you go ahead and roll the Wayback Machine, tell us the whole story, and I will sit quiet for a little bit and let you go.
Okay, sounds good. 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I was at home with my daughter, and I started having trouble breathing, and I didn't know what was wrong. And I'm a nurse, and had been a nurse for years by then. And I remember thinking this feels like anaphylaxis, and I had a shellfish allergy as a kid. So, I had EpiPens at the house. I'd always kept them with me. Had never had to use them, and hadn't had any shellfish, so I had no idea what was precipitating it. And I started kind of getting that panicked feeling, and I knew what it was because I had treated patients with it. And so um, I went and I took my EpiPen, and we went on to the hospital. And I got to the hospital, and it was this little small town hospital, and I had worked in the ICU there years before. And it was so funny because I hope she's watching. The nurse that that took me in, did the intake, said, "Well, I don't even know why you're here. You took your EpiPen. Why did you even come to the emergency room?" And I'm like, "Because you take an EpiPen and you go to the emergency room." And I was still having a lot of trouble breathing. And of course, I was broke out in hives, and it wasn't going well. And so she said, "Well, we don't have any rooms empty right now, so we're going to put you in a chair. It'll be kind of by the nurse's station, so they'll keep an eye on you." And so I'm sitting there, and it gets to the point where I'm looking up like this because my throat is so tight. And I've got stridor, which is this awful noise you make when you can't get air in because your throat's swollen. And they're all just kind of walking around, going about their own thing. So I get my second EpiPen out and take it. And she comes in and she says, "Well, we've got a room clean. We're just trying to get a bed in it." And I said, We got to get going. We don't have an IV in." And she said, "Well, as soon as we get a bed, we don't have a bed." And I said, "Well, by all means, let me die in the hallway then." And I knew what was going to happen. And so finally they get me into the room, and the nurse practitioner comes in, and she looks at my throat, and she says, "Oh, move her to the big room." And I'm thinking, "Oh crap, not the big room." Anything but the big room. And so they wheel me across the hall where the crash cart and everything is, and they can't get an IV in because with anaphylaxis all your vessels kind of clamp down, and they've let me go so long that they can't get an IV in. So they're giving me epinephrine and Benadryl, intramuscular. And that's just kind of holding us off. And so Don gets there after like 45 minutes of this, and he tells him, he says, "You need to intubate her. She's going to die." And they said, "Oh, no, no, we've got plenty of time. We're far away from that." And then I quit breathing. And so I fell over, was unconscious. I think at that point I had had 600 milligrams of Benadryl. So if you can imagine, that is just a ton of Benadryl. And they got me intubated, called Life Flight, got me flown from the small hospital to Lexington, and put on the ventilator there. And so that's when I've actually had 3 near-death experiences. This whole condition that I have is called idiopathic anaphylaxis, and it's anaphylaxis without any known cause. So I've been tested for all these allergies, and I was fine until I had about 3.5 years ago. I was working with a patient, and he hit me several times, and I ruptured C5-6, C6-7 discs in my neck, and had to have hardware put in, and I've had this condition ever since that. And so I don't know if it triggered something autoimmune or what the issue is, but I was fine before that. So it's happened. August will be 3 years. So from that many Augusts ago until now, it's happened 18 times. I've been on the ventilator every time, had to be in comas every time. So you lose a lot of time, when you spend that much time in a coma over 3 years. And I had 3 near-death experiences with the first 3 episodes of anaphylaxis, and they kind of were like each one kind of expanded on the one before. So it all just seems like one experience to me now. So even when I write about it, I write it as one experience because I can't sort out where one starts and the other ends. And so, um, yeah, so I'm in the hospital in Lexington, and I just, I don't know where actually I popped out of my body, but I ended up in my sister's car in Wisconsin. And so I must have already been in Lexington at the time. And And so I'm sitting in the back seat of her car, and it's pouring rain, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? Why is she driving in this awful rain? So she pulls over to a gas station, and she's under the canopy, and I look over the seat to see what she's doing, and her clothes don't match. And I'm thinking, why is she wearing that? She looks awful. And I'm still not sorting out how did I get in her car? What's going on? It's all very confusing. And so she pulls up her phone, and she opens up Facebook, and I see her page, and it says, "Hang on, kiddo, I'm coming." And I thought, well, maybe one of her kids is sick. What is going on? Well, it was interesting. When I woke up from the coma, I told her, I said, "I saw what you put on Facebook." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You typed in, 'Hang on, kiddo, I'm coming.' Is one of the kids sick?" And so it was just this really cool validation because there was no way I could have known about that. And so anyway, I'm in the car, I see all that, and then I start realizing that my body doesn't feel normal. And so I kind of, I run my hands down myself, and I feel almost like kind of like gel or something weird like that. And I'm thinking, okay, something's not right. I don't think I'm in my body. And as soon as I thought that, everything went black and I was unconscious. And so um, the next thing that I remember, I kind of start waking up, and I'm in this really, really dark place, and I don't know where I am. And so I go to yell, and nothing comes out. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a dream, or something's wrong. Why can't I hear my voice? And I could actually feel the sound, but I couldn't hear it. And it was so dark. I'd never been any place so dark. And it was weird because I could see that it was dark. And I don't know how you can see something that's dark, but I saw it. And I didn't know how big it was because it was so dark. And I felt like I still had at least some perception of a bodily form. And so I was just stuck there, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to get out. I didn't I still hadn't quite realized that I had died yet. And I just was really scared. And I knew that this place, it wasn't hell. I knew it wasn't hell. And then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe I did die, but where am I if I'm dead? And I'd start getting really fretful about it, and then I'd just feel this kind of deep sleep coming on, and it would just kind of take me, and I'd be gone for a little while, and then I'd be back in the void again. And so probably the second or third time that I woke up there, I realized, I thought, okay, I think I'm dead. Something's wrong. I'm definitely not in my body anymore. And so I started trying to figure out where I was, and I thought, okay, it's not hell because I've gone to church enough, and this is nothing like what they described hell as. It's definitely not heaven. And so I thought, oh man, I'm in purgatory.
Oh,
I thought, all those years of Catholic teaching from my childhood. And I thought, well, okay, that might not be so bad because as I understand the rules, I might be able to get out of purgatory. And so, it just kind of keeps going back and forth like this. And then finally I wake up and I'm near this wall, and it looks like a glass sort of wall that isn't quite solid. And I float over to it, and I kind of lean forward and I look in, and I see myself in the hospital, and I'm hooked to the ventilator, and all these tubes and wires, and I was so happy. I thought, oh, there I am. I didn't imagine that whole life. I had started wondering if maybe I had always existed in the void and I had just imagined this life just for mental busy work because the void was so terrible. And I thought, well, maybe I imagined my kids, and maybe I imagined everything that I thought was my life. But then I saw me and I was so happy, and I thought, okay, I'm really sick, but I could recover, and I didn't know how I had gotten so sick. And I just kind of kept looking through the wall, and I thought, maybe I could try and wake myself up. And so I looked at myself, and I thought, well, I can't, there's this barrier, I can't quite get through here. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, I see my body, so I must be my spirit. So if I could get through this wall, maybe I could kind of shove my spirit back in my body, and then everything would be okay. And so there comes a point where I'm actually able to cross that barrier, and I get into the room and I'm thinking, okay. And it's funny because I'm funny no matter where I go. I'm like, I'm even funny dead, you are who you are. I thought, you'd be like this kind of dispassionate angel just floating around, singing God songs or whatever. I didn't realize you retained your personality. And so I'm there and I'm looking down at myself in the bed and I'm thinking, okay, there's the penny suit. That's what I called it. There's the penny suit. And maybe if if I could get my spirit to like lay down on it, I could soak back into it. That's probably how it works. So I'm trying to push my spirit's like up in the corner of the room, and I'm trying to push myself down so that I can get sucked back into the penny suit. And of course that didn't work. And so I look down at my body and I'm thinking, okay, let's try to wake her up. Maybe I can wake her up, and then maybe I'll get sucked back in. And so I kind of focus on, trying to get myself to open my eyes, and that's not working, and I'm just really frustrated. And and then I think, okay, just a finger. Maybe I'm trying too big. Let's just try to get her to move her finger. And so I focus on the finger. No, nothing happens, and I get sucked back into the void. And so I'm in the void for, time is so weird there. It was like, I don't know. It was like everything happens all at once. Like linear time is just here. Um, but there, everything happens all at once, but it's not chaos, but it still seems like you could tell the story. It's really hard to describe. And so, I'm thinking about how to get back in my body. Why am I in this void? And I finally think maybe this is supposed to be some sort of lesson for me. Maybe I'm supposed to learn something. And so I start thinking back on my life, and especially my life. I got divorced when my oldest was 5, and he's 24 now. So it had been a long time. And I go back, and I started kind of looking at my life and all of the hurts and everything that had happened, and I realized I had built this wall around myself to kind of keep all of that out and keep myself safe. And I had started working. I'd become a nurse, and I was working 3, 4, 12-hour shifts a week, raising 3 kids by myself with no help, and no break from the kids at all because their dad didn't see them. And I just had kind of walled myself off and I wasn't living anymore. I was getting up and doing what I had to do, but there was no passion in my life. There was no, um, I didn't feel like I had a sense of purpose. I had really cut myself off from people because it was just easier. I just felt like everybody was just more effort I had to put in, and I was already so tired. And so I could see where I had kind of just through self-protection built this wall around myself, and yeah, nobody could get in, but I wasn't experiencing life either. And
Did, did you see like a life review or anything like that?
yeah, it kind of, I went back and what was funny, well, I didn't see the life review till I got with God, but I'm realizing all of this that
Okay, it's
maybe
coming. I didn't mean to cut you
yeah,
off. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. I realized that, I think that the void is a lesson. I think this is not someplace I'm going to have to stay. I just need to figure out why I'm there. And so I'm kind of going through everything and going through my life and seeing, of course, that I had isolated myself, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the void is symbolic of what I've done. It's this wall that I've built up. And the reason I can't get to my body and get back in is because I'm not connected with who I am anymore in life. And here in the spirit world, it's exactly the same. And as soon as I realized it, there was like this rattling, and it was thunderous. And it was almost like violently cracking an egg. And everything just split. And all of a sudden, the dark went down and behind me, and there was just light. And this, sorry. So the spirit comes to me, and it's definitely female, and it's a big, big spirit. And I feel her like draw me up into her arms. It was like a magnet. I just got pulled into her chest. And so she's got one arm around me, and she puts her fist out and she hits the void, and it shatters. And all these pieces are flying all around. And so now I'm in her arms, and there's like this funnel of energy going around both of us. And the shards from the void are hitting her light. And every time they hit the light, they're just cast off. I don't even know where they went. They're just cast far away. And so I'm just so relieved to be out of that darkness. And I'm looking up at the spirit, and I'm thinking, man, I know her. How do I know her? And I'm looking, and she's got these blue green eyes, and I feel this really strong connection with her. And I look up, and she's got this red hair, and it's so red it's on fire on her head. And I remember it. I remember it's my grandmother. And I remember I said her name. I said, Levita Patrius. And she just smiled at me. And, of course, you don't say anything, it's all telepathic. And I was just dumbfounded. I'd believed in God my whole life, but I was just hoping there was an afterlife. I didn't really have a whole lot of confidence in it. And so there she was. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're not dead. And she's like, no, no, I'm right here. And I said, and all that grief that I had carried, she died when I was 9. I didn't even realize I still had grief. But, it just all kind of melted away. And I remember crying um, and just weeping. And she put her arms around me and she said, oh, calm yourself, dear one. And when you say something there, it happens. There's thought creation. And so when she says, calm yourself, dear one, I'm immediately calm. And I'm talking like anesthetic calm, I'm trying to stay awake. I'm so calm. And I, I just was blown away. I said, how could, am I dead? And she said, well, kind of. She said, there really is no death. You're either alive on the physical realm on the earth, or you're super alive here. And she said, but with you, you're kind of in both places. She said, there's a cord still attaching you to the other side. And if that cord gets cut, then you'll be all the way here. But for now, you're in both places. And so that seemed to make pretty good sense. And I asked her, I said, well, if I'm lying in the hospital, how can I be thinking? And she said, oh, your mind, your consciousness isn't held in your brain like a component. It's eternal. It exists whether your body does or not. And she said, it's just like you learned when you were a little kid. Energy isn't created or destroyed. It just changes forms. And so you've just changed forms and come here. And that all seemed to make really good sense. I thought, well, yeah, I learned that in third grade. So yay, Mrs. Woods, for teaching me that, because it holds true all the way across. And so, um, we kind of went back and forth, and she showed me. It was really cool because we got kind of to this different location. I don't exactly know how to explain where we were, but it was definitely different. And there were all these people there. And when I say people, I mean like more people than I could ever count. And they were off to my right, and I said, who are all those people? And some of them, like one guy was like a tribesman. He had the big, hair, and he just had a loincloth on. And I remember asking, why are people dressed differently? Some people had robes, and um, some people, like I was just light. My grandmother had light, but it was kind of like a robe of light. And she said, well, people here are dressed according to their preconceived notions about what they would wear when they got here. So that was pretty cool, because now I'm thinking about like what I want to wear in heaven, because since I can pick it out. I didn't, I didn't know that then. And so I see all these people, and I said, who are they? Because they weren't known to me. I felt connected to them, but I didn't know them. And she said, oh, dear one, those are the legions that have been cheering you on all along. And I just thought, that's amazing. There have been legions watching my life, cheering me on. All those times when I felt so alone and, just hopeless, that they were all up there. I was never really alone, and I'd heard it, but it was just something entirely different to experience it. And so that was really cool. And um, so, I'm there, and I'm kind of just absorbing it all. And I started crying again. I started thinking about, all of the hurts that I'd had in life. And we kind of flashed back through them. My husband leaving, and him abandoning the kids, just having nothing to do with them. And I saw all of those things, and I just wept. I wept for all of the suffering in the world, and I wept for people who thought that this was all there was, just the earth, and that you die and there's nothing. And my heart just broke for them, because I thought that's, I was in the void, and that was pretty hopeless, and I would hate for that to be true for anyone. And she calmed me again, and so once I finally got settled down, I just was kind of floating there, enjoying the light, and I didn't realize she had left. And so all of a sudden, there's this, like, I don't know, it was like this vibration, and it shook me all the way, like, to my smallest parts, and I couldn't catch my breath or anything. And the light just kind of exploded and was so brilliant. And I heard this voice say, I am. And I was like, holy moly, I'm with God. And he is so cool, for one thing. He's funny. I didn't expect that. But I would think, like, goofy things, and he can hear your thoughts, and you're not used to that, because people here can't hear your thoughts. So you think goofy things, and no one's privy to your internal dialogue if you know how to control it. And so I would I was like, um, I was wondering if I was naked. And I thought, oh man, I hope I'm not naked in front of God. And he laughed. And I thought, oh no, he can hear my thoughts. So I'm trying not to have thoughts, because I don't want him to think I'm goofy. But he really just got a kick out of my sense of humor. And so we started a life review. And we went through all of the things that I had regret over, that I thought I had done wrong. And it was just laid out before me in such a beautiful way. And he showed me, he said, this is your part of my love story, and all of that you went through, that's okay. That's part of the love story. That's part of the story you're going to tell about who you were and the mistakes you made, and how this changed you. That's going to change other people's hearts and bring them hope. And I thought, oh, that makes me feel so much better. And then we started going through all of the good things, and I expected it to be big things I had done, big sacrifices I had made. Um, and it wasn't. I didn't see any of that. I saw little things. I saw me paying for a lady's groceries. I had completely forgot I'd done that. I got to see the future ripple effect of those things. So I saw that later on down the road, this woman was working in a food pantry helping other people. And I saw encouragements that I had given to the little kids that were in my after school program. And and a lot of the kids that were in my after school program were foster children that were really troubled. And I saw them going forward and having productive lives and remembering the things that I had said to them. And so that was really cool. And then we kind of went through and I saw some of the things that were real painful that weren't my fault, like my husband leaving and everything with the kids. And I remember thinking to God, how are you going to fix that? You know, I don't see, and I was bitter. And I said, I don't see you fixing that. You know, how do you fix broken hearts of children? And why would you even allow that if you're God? You know, and I questioned if he was God to him. And that's a pretty big thing to do. But he was so okay, you know, he's like, I'm God, and nothing you say changes that. It's okay. You can wonder and question and be angry at me and curse me, you know, I'm still God. It's okay. And I said, what about that? You know, what about the hurt of the kids? And I was telling Carton Swain when we did our interview, I said, I can remember my kids, their dad would tell them he was going to send them something. And I can remember every day them going to the mailbox and coming back and the mailbox being empty. And it just, those were some of the biggest heartbreaks in my life. And I said, how do you make that right? And he said, oh my goodness. He said, you've misunderstood everything. And so he says, let me show you something. And so he kind of pulls me into his arm and we kind of come into this garden and I see this scene play out. And it's my son with his son, who's right now he's only 4, but in the scene he's about 8. And David's watching him play. David is my son. And he's watching my grandson play. And I hear his thoughts. And he says, you know what, Cole? I'm going to be the dad to you that I deserved. And I thought, wow, if that's the only good that comes from that, that's the hugest thing ever, you know, that he would go on and be the dad that he deserved, because he deserved a good dad. And so I saw this beauty coming out of things that I just thought would always be negative. And everything was reframed. And it was an amazing thing to be a part of. And so we kind of, so this light, gosh, the light, I could just write books about the light. Um, God is like this totally sensory experience. There's light and there's resonance, and he sounds like a low G on the piano, not the lowest G, but like the next one up. And he vibrates like that sound. And I can remember, I don't know much about music, but when I came back, we were sitting in church one day and this lady was kind of playing this thing on the piano, and I got goosebumps and I was just shaking all over and I was in tears. And Don's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, that's it. That's what God sounds like. That's his sound. And so the lady was so sweet. She didn't know me. And we went up after church and I said, will you let me touch the piano? Will you play that again? Because I wanted to feel that in me again. And so I pushed myself. So here I am, you know, kind of laid out on this piano. And I'm like, play it again, play it again. And I'm like, oh, yes, that's what he felt like, you know? And so we're there and he's got this sound and he smells good. I said, he smells kind of like frankincense and vanilla. And I just remember thinking, man, you smell good, you know? And and everything there is this multi-sensory experience. We would see flowers, and the flowers had each individual flower would have its own color and its own song and its own taste. And you didn't have to touch it or get near it. You would just, like, I could tell you that that yellow flower sounded like this, tasted like this, and never have even touched it. Um, and we could fly, and that was you could do anything. There was this amazing thought creation. I could think I wanted to do something, and then I was doing it. There was no lapse. And I always tell people that's how time is different there. Like, you know, God says he's the beginning and the end. And I said, well, yeah, because time there's like a clock. So imagine God's at 12 o'clock, and that's the beginning. And you go all the way around at the end, there's 12 o'clock again, and he's still there. You know, whereas here we see it as linear, which is kind of a false concept of time. But there just was this amazing garden, and we flew, and I remember I could think myself off the ground. And the really cool thing was, when I was a little kid, I was having out of body experiences, and I didn't know it. I knew it once I got to heaven, but I didn't know that that's what it was all this time. But I can remember when we were little kids, um, I couldn't have been more than 9, and I dreamt that I flew. And so I flew all over our neighborhood, and we had this little corner store, and I flew over the corner store, and there was a frisbee on the roof, and it had been white, but it was kind of made pale by being up there for so long, and it had the name Sean written on it. And so I went to my best friend and I said, "Hey, I had this dream that I flew and that there's a frisbee on top of the corner store." And he's like, "Oh, you're crazy, you're crazy." And I said, "No, no, I'm telling you, I saw it. It was so real." So we waited till the corner store closed and we climbed it, and that frisbee was up there. And so I never kind of knew what to make of that in my life. But when I had my near-death experience, I was like, "Oh, yeah, you can get out of your body because there's a cord that keeps you from dying. So sure, you could fly." And so, there was just kind of a lot of real cool sensory things. Being able to fly beneath water was really cool. The the structure of something didn't change your ability to fly through it. So you could fly through the ground, you could fly through a tree, you could fly through the water and come out and not be wet. Um, and that was kind of about it. I didn't want to come back, and um, I remember I remember understanding that it was my decision, and I felt like I had already decided a long time ago that this wasn't going to be my time and that I had to go back, and because I hadn't done what I was supposed to do here. I hadn't lived life like I should. I hadn't appreciated it and embraced it, and so I got to come back, and I asked God to let me remember everything, and He did. And acclimating was the hardest thing. I tell people, when my kids were little, I would buy them these Christmas presents, and you know how they come with like all those little really hard to get off ties on them and stuff when they're tied into the box, and they have like the battery compartments, and you need that little tiny screwdriver to get it open. And it was so frustrating to my kids on Christmas morning to wait while I tried to get. So the night before, I would always unwrap everything and put it, but it would never fit in the box right again. And I'm like, "Oh, dang it, I can't get it back in the box." Well, that's how I felt. I felt like I had just been kind of shoved in this package again, and I didn't fit anymore. And then I still feel like that because I go out and I'll see somebody and I'll remember their life, and it's not a person I know, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm remembering their life." And I used to not be able to tell people, to not tell people. I just would blurt it out. So we were in a restaurant one time, and I said to the waitress, I said, "You were in Florida and you were thinking that you should work at a restaurant down there, and there was one right by the beach that had lots of windows and you love the light. I'm telling you, you should go to that restaurant and work there because you need to be near the water and it'll change your life." And I was exactly right. And she's like, "How could you know that?" I said, "I don't know. It happens to me all the time. It's so weird. I'm so sorry." But yeah, it's just been a kind of a
Well,
basket of
let
weirdness.
me back you up a little bit.
Okay.
What happened with when you got back in your body? You were like, "Well, I went through my review. I asked God if I could come back, and boom, I was in my body." Tell that story about going back in.
I just woke up.
That
I
was it.
I
There,
was
you didn't go back to the room or like try to get in your body, or you just was like, bam, and it was a flash, and you were there.
I was there. I opened my eyes and I was in the hospital bed and I was off the ventilator, and the nurse was telling me that I needed to take deep breaths. She's like, "You need to take," and I could hear alarms going off. And she's saying, "Take deep breaths, take deep breaths." And my sister was standing there with my son, and they were both crying. And oh, I had overheard a conversation with them. They had actually been in the waiting room, and I can't quite remember when that was now. There's been so many comas between then and now, but I had heard her and saw where she and my son were sitting in the waiting room, and they were talking about that I needed to sign papers so that people could make my medical decisions if this happened again. And my sister had blue Kleenex in her purse. And so when I woke up, I told her about the thing in Wisconsin. And I told her, I said, "I heard what you were saying in the waiting room." I said, "You guys were sitting right by the bathroom and you had blue Kleenex in your purse. Where did you get blue Kleenex?" And it's so funny because to this day she kind of has really pulled away from the whole thing. We don't really talk anymore. She's been really put off by the whole near death experience thing. It's
So
funny because she's a church person, but
yeah, you'd think the story would be so. To me, that's a nice story of hope and love, and it would, if anything, it's comforting. I don't know why people would be put off by it.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think she was a little upset that I told her, I said, you're either here or you're there. Um, so all this worry about hell, and yes, you do take your energy with you, and the void's a pretty scary place to be, and it felt like I was there for a really long time. Um, so, even though I believed in God, I ended up in a negative place just because of the life I was manifesting. But eventually we all figure it out. We all figure it out. We all get there. And she really rejected that message. And a lot of people who are Christians reject that message.
yeah, that's. I mean, that's surprising because it's such a. I hear a lot of Christian in that message. I mean, you went to your version of heaven. There's God. There's I mean, to me, I think that would be comforting. I'm surprised that they wouldn't dig it. Um, so tell me, when you're over in the review and you're watching, what blows me away is that you're watching the ripples. The ripple effect must be amazing because you're like, oh, that's why this happened, and oh,
Yeah.
that's why this happened to me, and to see that how it'll all make sense. That
Mhm.
you come back in and just to have all that kind of knowledge, and I assume that that's how you picked up knowledge across about other people that you don't know, is they're somehow in your ripple effect.
Well, we're all connected, all of us. You're connected to every plant, every animal, every person. You know,
So
you,
when you're over on the other side, you feel the connection to everything.
yes, I still
It's
feel it.
you could know what like a plant's feeling or what somebody is feeling that you don't know.
Yes, we had this tree in our front yard, and everything gives off light, whether you can perceive it with your eyes or not. It gives off light, and if you have special cameras, you can measure it and all this stuff, which I didn't know before. But um, it was so funny because we had this tree in our front yard that probably 2 years ago got struck by lightning, and it's a Bradford pear tree, and we hadn't kept it topped well, so they get kind of heavy. And so we lost about half the tree, and then wind got another third of the tree. And so Don had cut it down, and it was just probably maybe a 4.5 foot stump. And he just was having such a hard time getting rid of the stump because he'd planted it when he built the house. And so I had kept hounding him, and I said, "Babe, you gotta cut that tree down. It's really ghetto looking. You got to get rid of it." And and he just couldn't do it. Well, we were in the driveway one day, and it's really hard to describe. Something just took my breath away, and it choked me up. And I'm not a crazy emotional person generally, and so I looked over and I saw the tree, and I looked at Don and I said, and I'm thinking, oh man, he already thinks I'm going Buddhist monk on him. This is going to blow him away. And I said, hey babe, I can feel that tree loving me. You can't cut it down. And I said, its name is Lola. And I'm like, was she a showgirl? All that Barry Manilow stuff comes back. But that was her name. Her name was Lola. And it means long suffering, I think is what it means when I looked it up. And so anyway, we couldn't cut down Lola. And so that's been, I guess, a year and a half now. Well, she's come back. She's got these huge branches, and birds are nesting in her, and she was right. She wasn't ready to die. And so I feel so glad that I respected her and her desire not to be cut down.
So when you come back and you can like hear this stuff, is it because you were in touch with it on the other side and you got to bring that connection back with you without it being muffled or suppressed here?
I think so. I mean, it's muffled and suppressed to some extent because I don't, the colors are different, and I can't smell flowers, or, well, I mean, I can smell them, but not from a distance, and I can't hear the music. Sometimes I can hear the music.
Yeah,
Most of the
people say there's more colors on the other side.
time, a
There's a
lot more.
bunch of colors that we don't see.
Mhm. Because
And
there's so much light with it. You don't have all light emanating from things here, or at least you can't see it with the naked
Uh,
eye. But
what's
even
the? I'm sorry. Go
we
ahead.
were we were in the Walmart parking lot and we were talking, and I felt, you know how you'll be sitting at a traffic light and you can feel somebody looking at you, and you know which direction it's coming from and everything. When you look that direction, that's the person. You know how you can sense that, because we can feel each other's energy. For anyone who doubts that you can feel someone else's energy, there can be a person 2 cars over staring at you and you will feel it and look. And I kept feeling that sort of sensation. And so I look to my right, and in the parking lot, there's a rock, and I can see the light coming off it. And I said, Don, I can see the light coming off that rock. And he's been so sweet. He's like, it's okay, babe. It's going to get better. You know, I said, I'm just going crazy. I can see the light off rocks, and I'm hearing trees loving me, and I'm going crazy. He's like, you're not going crazy. It's okay. You know, so I mean, 70, I think it's 70% of people who have a near death experience end up divorced because
Wow.
their spouse cannot handle it.
I could definitely see that, especially I think that's probably true with any sort of awakening. I saw, we've had a lot of talks with people with the Mandela Effect, and I bet it's going to lead to some pretty big divorces, because if you have this spiritual experience or this shift in reality and your spouse thinks you're crazy, that's kind of hard to live with. So, you got to have someone that supports you on,
Yeah.
because to us, in this group, you're going to have a lot of people that not only believe you, but have also heard or seen some of the same stuff. Like you talk about
Right.
music on the other side. What is the music you heard?
You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever heard Tom Kenyon? Tom
No.
Kenyon's a Native American, and he does this music. You can find it on YouTube. And it's like that. For me, it was. Other people describe it completely differently. So I think it's probably pretty individual. But um, it was kind of Native American flutes and drums. You know, there was definitely a lot of percussion. And every once in a while, I can still hear it. I'll hear it, and I'll say, Don, do you hear that? Can you hear that music? And he's like, no, no, only you can hear it. But he doesn't think I'm crazy, which is really sweet. So
Now, do you think each person sees a different version of heaven when they get there? Like if you're Native American, you kind of hear drums or whatever, or I get there, I hear disco and funk. Like what am I gonna, is it different, do you think, for each person? Did you get that knowledge when you were over there?
well, I mean, that wasn't music that I had ever listened to before I went. So that was a new one on me.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I came back, a friend of mine, because I kept telling him, I said, I'm hearing this music. I didn't even know what it was. I had never heard Native American music before. And he said, let me send you something. And he sent me Tom Kenyon. And I was like, holy moly, that's it. That's what I heard. Um, so yeah. And I saw things like, people say past lives. I'm not so sure, because you're connected to everybody when you're there, and you're so intimately connected. It's kind of hard to know like what's your stuff and what was their stuff. So I wasn't sure if maybe I was seeing somebody's life and I was so tied to their spirit that it felt like my stuff. I don't know.
Wow, that's a really interesting theory. I don't think anyone has ever said that, but I could see that. If you could see everybody's thoughts and you were tied to them, I guess if we pulled that here, there could be some confusion that it was your life, or
Right,
it would
right.
feel like your life because you're sharing it. That's a really
Yeah.
interesting idea.
And when you share it in spirit, it's very intimate. You know, then um when God wanted to tell me something, it you know how like now I would say, if I told you something, if I said to you, my full name is this and this is my phone number and address, you would have to really work to remember that. 5 minutes in the conversation, you'd probably be like, "Ah, shoot, what'd she
Yeah.
say her address was?" It's not like that there. When information is given to you, it imprints on you, and there's no weight of trying to remember it or anything. It's just there all the time. And so, yeah, there was this just really cool relaying of information. And so when I would see these scenes, like there was this scene where there was a valley at the foot of a mountain, and there were all these tents, and they were made of hide. And it was really interesting because when you looked at it from a distance, that there were campfires down there, and it was just a Native American village down there. And the I thought it was really interesting how the fire lit up the hide on the tents and made them kind of glow. And you could smell pottery. People were cooking in pottery. And I remember going down to this village, and and I was maybe 8 or 9, and we lived outside the village. I wasn't Native American, but we lived close by, and so I played with the children there. And so I don't know if that was me or if I was just partnered in spirit to see that. And then I saw another scene, and God really used that scene to teach me. I saw this scene where um, it it looked like it was me. I'm not sure if it was, or like I said, I was just partnered with somebody else's memory. And we were in this old way back. I mean, I want to say like Jesus times or something. And I was talking to these women, and they were talking about how badly their husband treated them. And I said, here's the thing: is we put up with it. We let them treat us badly. They shouldn't be hitting us, and they shouldn't be allowed to publicly stone us. And until we start standing up for ourselves, it's going to continue like this. And so it got out that I was kind of rabble rousing, and or this person, like I said, I don't know that it was me. So we go down to this, like, I don't know, area kind of by like where the sanctuary would be, and where like all the government would be. And they take and they tie my arms and legs to different horses, and they scare the horses, and the horses run. And of course I'm drawn and quartered, and light shoots out the holes where my arms and legs were, and I was just kind of levitating with this light, and it freaked everybody out. And then I was back there with God again. And so, like I said, I don't know if that, I'm guessing that probably happened to somebody else, and I just was a partner. But when God brought me back, um, He said, "You have this theory that you have to give yourself away to be of worth. That you have to be emotionally taking care of everybody else, and that you can't have your own passions and joys and things that you want to do, and you think you're only worth something if you're taking care of other people. And I want you to know, if you give yourself completely away, you don't have anything else. And it's okay for you to take care of you and to love you." He said all this stuff about, in church, I hear it a lot, especially in Kentucky, not our church particularly, but churches in general. There's this kind of worm mentality. And the worm mentality is that you're a worm. You're this disgusting, filthy creature that's not worthy of God's love. And that's just garbage. If you weren't worthy of God's love, then what's the point of anything? And He made you. It's just like with your kids. You made your kids, no matter how they behave, you love them. And it was like that for him. And I really liked that He told me that it was okay to take care of myself and to love myself. And I've lived completely differently because of it.
Yeah, I
It doesn't
definitely.
feel selfish.
That's that's amazing, because I wonder how many people come back with the kind of insight you have and the connections that that blows open all these doors. Because I do know that people come back and completely change their lives and become different people after this. I mean, to you, like, I would assume you're not scared of death anymore.
Oh,
Like,
no.
you know what it is. So
No. It was funny. I was thinking the other day, my son had gone to the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert, and I had kept the kids for him. And the next morning he called me, and he said he was really tired and he was worried about driving. And I said, well, okay. I said, I'll bring the kids to you, and that way you won't have as long of a drive. And so I was taking the kids up to him, but he still had to take them to daycare. And I was driving home, and and I asked God. I said, keep them safe. Please keep them safe. And I thought to myself, so if David and the kids died today, how would I be my best self in that? And what good would come of that? And I knew in my heart that good would come of it, and that I would be okay, and that they would be okay, because they would go on to heaven. And my son's an atheist. um, I knew he would figure it out. He would sort it out. And I know I'm just going to get tons of feedback that's not good on that,
don't worry
but I
about it on this show.
but I've been there. I don't. What am I supposed to do?
You're
Lie?
your truth's your truth, and that's what you got to stay with. I mean, if you had this experience and it was more real than this place, I
Oh,
imagine
yes.
that you got to say what you really went through. Don't worry about what people think. I know, believe me, I get so much nasty comments on my page. People that, as soon as I throw any sort of opinion out, that I just, I try to be respectful, but don't let that keep. One of the worst things you can do in life is just not be yourself. So,
Yeah.
you know, say what you got to say, because you're making a lot of impact on people's lives right now listening to this, that have been through something like this, or they haven't, but they find this fascinating, you know. But there's a lot of people, I think, that listen to me that have had some sort of near-death experience. I think the Mandela Effect has kind of collected a lot of them together. For the best I can. I don't know why, but it seems to be a very high ratio of people that had some sort of either near-death or spiritually transforming event. By the way, if you're listening to this, guys, and you are a panelist, you know, I sent you an email about 5-10 minutes ago. You might want to check your email. Dana, Ewok, Una Rock, those guys. Some of y'all listening, just start coming in, and we'll work you in. Penny, gosh, there's so many things I could ask you about this, because you know, a common theme of near-death experiences is this life review, that people think it's kind of like, you know, fiction because there was like movies made about it and stuff, and then you find out, no, it's real when you get there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's not what you think though. It's not like this.
You're not being judged. You're
At
just being
least for me,
shown.
no, I didn't feel like I was being judged. I felt like it was not that at all. Um, I felt like I was being held through the whole thing. You know, I felt like God had me, and He was supporting me through what I was going to have to see, because you do get to see your whole life, you know. And I saw, you know, not so much the bad things I did, but I saw thoughts that I had, and where we're all connected. A lot of people don't realize this, but if I'm sitting here, or if somebody's sitting here watching the video, and they're thinking, you know, oh, she's crazy, or that's stupid, or whatever, because our spirits are connected, my spirit actually feels that, whether I'm mentally aware of it or not. So I always tell women, you know, I worked for years as a nurse, and nurses are either really sweet, wonderful people, or they're the meanest, gossipy people you've ever met in your life. And I always tell people, be careful what you think, because thoughts have energy and our spirits are connected. So if you have a negative thought, or a hurtful thought about someone, it actually injures their spirit, and you will see it later. You know, and it's not so much that there's going to be retribution and you're going to be in trouble for doing it, but it hurt my heart to see the things that I had thought or said behind people's backs. And I saw that it actually injured their spirit, and it hurt their ripple effect. It hurt their ability to do positive things. And so that was really hard for me.
So it's the unseen stuff that you don't know about that does so much damage. Like you'll
Yes.
say, and you got to see what both sides of that. Did you see what people did to you and what you did to people
I
when you
didn't
were
see
over
what
there?
people did to me. I saw direct hurts, you know, but I already knew about those. So no, I wasn't privy to anybody's negative thoughts
Junk.
about
Okay.
me.
Very interesting. All right. Well, one of my buddies that I have not had a chance to hang out with in a while, Uni Rock, are you there? You want to unmute and come on in? I believe he has something to say on near death experiences.
Yep. Hey,
You,
Doc, man.
there you
It's been
go.
a minute.
I've got some reverb on you though. Are you hearing yourself? Yeah.
Give me
Why don't
1 second.
Yeah. Why don't you mute out on that? I think he's got to fix his mic. All right, Penny. Also, I wanted to ask you about how long of a time frame were you over compared to how long did you die? Like you're saying, there's no time on the other side, because for you to
Right.
review all these lives and to see all these things and understand, like if that were in our linear time frame, that would be lifetimes probably
Yes.
to understand all that. But it all happens at once over there, right? You can see it all.
Yeah, you know, I say that, but there feel like the void felt like I was there for a really long time. So it didn't feel like I was immediately rescued from the void. The void seemed like a big, long chunk of time. And so did being with, I mean, if I had to equate how long I felt like I was in the void, I would have to say that probably felt like the last 20 years of my life. It kind of felt like the same amount of time that I had isolated myself here.
Did you how long were you gone in our reality here?
Oh, I mean, I quit breathing. See, that's the thing, is everybody's like, oh, it's the what is it, DMT that your brain releases, and that's why you have this experience. Well, most of my experience happened when I was in the coma and I wasn't oxygen deprived. I was on a ventilator. You know, my vital signs were stable, and I was still over on the other side and back and over and back, and so that theory doesn't really hold water for me. And DMT also doesn't explain being able to know what my sister's posting on Facebook and conversations that are going on in other rooms, that sort of thing. But yeah, it seemed like a really, really long time over there. I mean, years and years, decades.
All right. Hey, Unirock, your mic's still open, dude. Or unless
Oh,
you're ready
sorry,
to
Doug.
go. No,
I'm
unless
ready. Yep.
you ready?
Am I echoing?
No, I think you got it fixed now.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Okay. You want me to just tell you about my near-death experience, or do you want me to wait? Okay.
I actually give me 1 sec. Let me introduce our other guest so she can jump in if she wants.
Definitely.
You there?
I'm here.
Okay. I don't know what name you want to use on air, so you go ahead and decide.
A drunken Ewok works.
Okay. And I want to go ahead and introduce you too, which you guys probably know her from the chat rooms. Feel free to jump in. I'm going to let Unirock tell his story first. So Unirock, go ahead and talk about near death, and then after that we'll jump in.
Will do, Doc. Thanks for having me on. Hi, drunken Ewok. What's your guest name, Doc? I didn't get your name.
Oh, that was Penny.
Penny. Hi,
She's
Penny.
the mysterious Penny.
Okay, nice to meet you. I'm Uni. Everybody calls me Uni. Yeah, I just did a video. This is crazy. Like, there's so many synchronicities, because I promise I didn't talk to you about what this show was going to be about before you did this. And I dropped this video maybe like 3 or 4 days before I saw you do the invite for this about my near-death experience. So that's so awesome. But yeah, I had one myself. I've talked about it a couple times, but I never got real deep anytime I've talked about it. But I was in the VA Medical Center due to some issues I was having. I haven't said what those issues were yet, but I'll go ahead and say it now. But I was having kind of some psychological issues from, I just come back from overseas not that long before that. And I don't want to say I was crazy or anything, but I was just, having a hard time readjusting to civilian life again. And I went into one of the floors at the VA that was a locked floor. It was, like a contained floor. You could leave, and they would let you if you wanted to, but you had to have a doctor's permission to do it. They preferred you to have a doctor's permission, but that kind of tells only about the scenario I was in. But I was around a lot of individuals who were very disturbed, and they were really, some people were seeing things and fighting the nurses because they thought the nurses were, something different than what they were, or things like that were going on all around me. And I was given some medication, and I always like to say, I know that there's some things in the media about the VA Medical Center, but I'm not speaking bad on them. They actually saved my life. I appreciate them and all that. But they gave me a medication, and I didn't know at the time. Right now, I don't really take any medications, but back then I was on a bunch of different ones while I was having therapy and stuff. And I had like an interaction, some type of drug interaction. And I remember walking, after I took the medication, I remember getting more hazy and things getting weird around me. And so I ended up walking back to the room that I was staying in. And I know, like, if you've ever been really exhausted and you've walked up to your bed, like after a long night or a bad day, I've fallen in head first before, just leaned straight over into my bed. My head kind of rolled to the side. So I had full airway and stuff, but there was just my body or my inner self, something like was affected by these two medications interacting with each other so much that I died, basically. I crashed. Now, this is where it gets weird, because like I didn't have a lot of memory when I came out of it. And it's all come back in pieces and stuff. But I fell face first, and I remember sometime after that, I don't know how long, I was numb all over my body. And from like the tips of my fingertips and my toes were numb, and then my arms were numb, and then I could feel it coming up into the center of me. And I was immediately like fully conscious. And there was this huge screaming thought in my brain, like nothing else was there, but you have to breathe, you have to breathe, you have to breathe. So I started to try to force myself to breathe, but I was barely breathing. And I remember getting fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier all over me until I went blank. And when I came to, maybe, I think it was a week later. I've been told 10 days, I've been told 6 days, so I'm not sure the time frame, but it was multiple days later. I woke up on the medical floor, and my ex-wife was sitting next to me. She was my wife at the time. My son was just a little baby then, or maybe a little older than that. But I came out of it like I'd never been gone, or like I was never in a coma or out, you know. So life was really hectic then, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't even like let it into my mind. But really slowly pieces started coming back about and I always say it was like the end of the movie Gladiator. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but at the end he's walking through, and I'm not going to release the plot line or nothing, but
No, it's okay, dude. The movie's like 30 years old. Go ahead.
yeah, okay.
You can just go ahead and give the spoiler.
Okay. So he's walking through a field after he's died, and there's like a certain light to everything. It's like kind of like a sepia colored if you're in video production, or it could be like gray scale, but with a little color to it or something. And then there's a lot of beams of light all through, and he's got these big grains of grass growing around him, and he's whisking his hand through it. And like everything was super, and to me, everything was super, my senses were like super charged or something. But yeah, it was like this kind of, these flashes of kind of like this dim but super bright reality. I know that's insane to say, like, and I've dreamt about it several times, so I'm trying not to bring my dreams that I've had about it in yet. But I was in another place, I'll tell you that much. And I'm, like I've said a million times, I was an atheist for a long time, from like 14 or 15 up until like 28 or 9. And I, until recently, never equated like the near-death experience with me becoming more spiritual until I had time to really think about it. But it does seem like that happened. And did you talk about like when you came back? She described her entire experience, like what it was like when she was gone and stuff too.
Yeah, I guess you missed part of that. Yeah, it was really detailed and in depth. It was very cool. I was going to ask you if you had some sort of similarities, but
well,
Peggy,
I saw most of it. I just cut out when I made dinner for like 10 minutes and cut out. So
no, it's okay, Peggy. Penny, you want to jump on this for a second? Give him like a brief synopsis of, you had the near death. She was stuck in a void for a while.
I heard that, and then
she got to the life review. Did you hear the life review part?
No, that would be great to hear. Again, I'm sorry, audience, if you're hearing stuff twice because of me.
Some of the, you're not the only person, because I keep seeing people jump in the chat being like, "Hey, I'm here an hour late," so they missed a lot of this. Penny, can you just review it for about 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. First I wanted to say I loved his description. I thought about that at the end of that movie, where he's walking through, and I was thinking there was a movie that came out, I'm thinking it was 2 years ago, and it was a movie about space, and oh gosh, I wish I could think of who was in it. But in the movie, they keep the person on the other side is pushing these books forward in kind of like a Morse code to
Interstellar. Yeah.
Interstellar. Okay, so I saw Interstellar in the theater, like right when it came out. We were up in Detroit visiting family, and there's this scene where they go into that outer space area, and you'll have to forgive me if I get it wrong. Like I said, a bunch of comas will mess up your memory. But it was a sound. Don told me how they made it. It's a particular kind of sound. I don't know if it's like pink noise or what it is, but there was a sound that they used to make it sound quieter. I wish he was in the room and I would ask him. But anyway, I remember hearing that sound in that movie, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what the void sounds like. And it made it sound quieter than quiet. I'll ask Don what it is when he comes through here. But anyway, so when you were talking about the end of that other movie, I thought, yeah, I remember that things in between the void and like when I was with my grandmother, things were kind of sepia colored, and it had very much the feeling like the end of that movie. Boy, they did a good job on that, didn't they? Now that I think about it.
Yeah,
That's so
it
accurate.
takes you to a different place. If you
Yeah.
haven't seen that one, you got to watch that too, because it's a different dimension in a way.
It's a great movie. But yeah, so I had a life review, and I was telling Taryn that we kind of just went through. I thought it would be like all the big things that I had done wrong and all the big things I had done right, and it wasn't. It was all the little things, and I saw how my thoughts affected other people because we're all connected. And I think you probably got most of it because you've been here from.
Yeah.
Did you get all of that?
Oh yeah, I caught most of everything up to that. So yeah, that's a lot of similarity to what I see now when I have a dream, because it affected me a lot, like subconsciously. So when I have dreams, sometimes I have like different kinds of dreams now since it happened. It's like I find myself back in that place sometimes, which is kind of scary sometimes, but you never want to think you're dying or like you're near death or something, but when I dream of it, I kind of feel like I am, which I know is weird, but yeah.
So did you have a life review or anything like that?
I don't know if I just didn't get that far or if I haven't remembered up to that yet. I know there's a good piece of it that I still can't, like I can see right where I'm at in my head right now with my memory of it, and I feel like I'm missing something, but it seems like I get more and more every time I go back to it. When I give it deep thought, I'm going to keep doing that and see what I can pull up. But
it's interesting trying to recall, because I remember being there and knowing everything, like anything that I'd ever had a question about, I knew the answer to. And sometimes I'll be here and somebody will say something, and it'll be something profound, like they're struggling or they've lost a child, and I'll remember the answer to that. Well, I won't remember it. I'll have this like deja vu moment where I'm thinking, wait a minute, I know why that is and what that's supposed to teach us, but I can't quite, you know how when you try to remember a dream and it keeps scooting away from you?
Yeah, it is like that. And the thing you said about the sound, the quieter than quiet, it was like every sense was like that for me. And then I heard these big echoey, kind of trumpety sounding, like the deepest deep bass sound you'd ever heard echo through the entire like reality. I remember hearing that. I don't know if I heard it right before I woke up or at the end of the whole thing, but I remember something like that shook me so hard that and then I remember kind of being back also. Whew, it shakes me up. I'm sorry, it shakes me up a little bit when I think about it too much, but
it still chokes me up, so I totally get that.
Like your senses all come back in one woof, boom, boom.
Yeah. Oh man, the biggest sonic boom you've ever felt.
Yeah, that's interesting. People talk about trumpets. That's right, baby.
That's how I described it.
All right, let's let Ewok add to the mix. Ewok, jump on in here and go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, and then throw in your 2 cents.
Well, I drunken Ewok. I don't have a personal near-death experience, but I do have several close friends that have had near-death experiences. One of whom has had several near-death experiences, and just with your stories, I find that a lot of them are very similar. And story, it just kind of confirms pretty much every spiritual belief that I have. Peggy, you've had this happen to you several times, is that correct?
3, yeah. Well, the whole like anaphylaxis has happened a ton of times, but just the NDEs 3 times.
3. Would you say with each experience, your perceptions and intuitions got even stronger?
Yeah, I've had to actually block some of it. We were talking about this the other day, and whatever that room was, Taryn, I can't remember right off the top of my head.
The Discord room.
Yeah, Discord.
Which I hate the name, by the way. We're gonna start calling it like the Harmony Room or some opposite of Discord. Discord's the worst name.
It is. I don't know why they named it that.
That is pretty bad.
We're gonna say something positive. So okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was seeing so many things I didn't want to see when I came back. You know, I would remember other people's lives, and um, murders would come to me, and that was really, really hard. And I've blocked a lot of that since. And I didn't know how to block it at first, so it was hard because they were very intrusive thoughts. So um, there was one day, and this name kept coming to me, and the person was there, and it was the only time. I think I think the only time that I really physically felt like I could see the person in the room. Like I could always have a mental image of who it was that was coming to mind, but this person was in the room, and I saw this spirit, and he hung around at my house for like a week, and it was driving me crazy. And I was like, what do you want? Go, you know, I don't know what it is you want. Cross over, do whatever you got to do. I just had a near death experience. I really don't want any part of this. And you know, I'm trying to get back to normal. And and he just hung around, and he hung around, and I knew his name. I won't say his name, but I knew his name. And it was the weirdest thing. It was probably 2 weeks into this whole thing going on that a friend of mine from uh, junior high, elementary school, junior high, posted that let me get this right, her cousin's wife's brother was missing. And she said his name, and it was the name of the guy that I was seeing. And I thought, holy cow, you got to be kidding me. And so I messaged her and I said, hey, Lori, you know, what's going on with this guy? And she said, he's just gone missing. They don't know where he is. He's been missing for a couple of weeks. And I said, he's not dead, and it has to do with drugs. And she said, no, he's, you know, that he's not into that. And she gave me gave me a link to the family's page. And of course, you know, they were putting up all these pictures of him and where he was last seen and all these other things. And so I kept trying to get in contact with the family, and you never know quite if you should do that or not, because, you know, people receive it differently. And so they didn't get back with me. So I thought, okay, that's my sign, and I'm just gonna let it go. But it just kept nagging me, and I couldn't sleep, and he was just here all the time, and I felt like he needed help, and I knew he was still alive. And so I started watching the page, and there was a man that was commenting, and he was this guy's best friend. And so I thought, okay, if he calls me crazy, he calls me crazy, but it's driving me crazy. I have to talk to him. So I messaged him and I said, I know you're going to think I'm nuts, but I know what happened to him. And he's like, no, I don't think you're nuts. Tell me. And I said, well, I see him, and he's getting in this truck, and he's supposed to be going one place. Everybody thinks he's going this one place. And he's supposed to have been going this place for a while now, and he's not been going there. He's been taking the money and going someplace else to buy drugs. And, you know, and my thing is, when this happens to me and I get stuff, especially on a murder, I tell people just yes, no, don't give me any details, because kind of for my own comfort, I need to know that this is actually real. And if you're giving me details, I'm really good at reading people. So, you know, years of nursing, and you kind of pick that up. And so I don't want anything to color it. So if they just say yes, no, then I know it's all me and it's coming through. So I was talking to him, and I said, he's with a woman, and she's heavy, and he's staying at her house, and she's giving him drugs. It's heroin. And he's going out in the mornings to look for money or to shoplift or heroin. And you're going to catch him. Somebody's going to catch him shoplifting. Well, so we were back and forth talking and everything. And it was funny because I even knew what grocery store he had driven past. And so he's like, yep, he stole my truck. He was supposed to be going to the methadone clinic. He didn't show up. And it was like 5:30 in the morning. We don't know where he is. So they've been looking and looking for him. And pretty soon they get a video. They get him on camera shoplifting at a Myers. And he was with this heavy black lady, or heavy white lady. She was exactly as I had described her. And I said, that's her. That's where he's staying. And he's close to that whole shopping area. And I said, you're going to find him. He's not going to die, but he's not going to beat this addiction. He eventually will die, but it won't be this time. And so he was with a friend of his who was a doctor. They were going to be meeting for Mexican food. And it was so funny because I kept seeing salsa. I was like, something about salsa. What does salsa have to do with any of this? Well, he's in the restaurant and he's waiting for this doctor friend of his to get there, and they're going to be talking about the guy that's missing. And his friend calls him and he says, "You're not going to believe this. I'm behind him. I'm behind your truck." He's pulling. I've called the police. He's pulling over into the grocery store. They were eating in this strip mall, and he said, "He's here. He's here in the parking lot." And the police pulled up and they arrested him for stealing the truck, and they got him into rehab. And as far as I know, he's still alive and doing okay. But
Wow.
yeah, so I blocked a lot of that because I don't like seeing. That one was okay because it turned out, but I don't like seeing murders.
Yeah, no, that's quite intense. And the reason that I asked is the friend of mine that has had several experiences with each time, her, everyday life has definitely become more powerful in many ways. And I see NDEs as kind of the ultimate fast track gateway to, all the answers of universal consciousness. And you when you commented about the tree, and I'm an empath. I do energy work, so I definitely understand what it's like to feel things that shouldn't be alive. But what you said to me about the tree just reminds me a lot of past life stuff that I've looked into, and really where we start out at the smallest being of energy, and we have to be that, and we have to come back and do it all over through every stage of life. Inanimate or seemingly inanimate objects, are part of that cycle. So that was a really cool story that just kind of stuck with me. But I kind of see it all as a gateway. Like DMT came up, I have tried that, had definitely similar experience with the white light and just complete peacefulness. Again, they're all gateways, and I think some people just develop a strong enough mind-body-spirit connection. They don't necessarily need those gateways. I'm not saying we all want to die to figure out what it is. But I find it fascinating and how it lines up with, a lot of spiritual practices and what people who are deeply experienced experience.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about DMT? Like I've heard that DMT is released in your mind when you pass over. Do you think that when you take it, it is similar to a near-death experience? Do you think that's possible? Just your opinion. You know what I mean?
Who are you asking?
Ewok. Everybody, but I wanted to see.
Yeah, I think we need to find someone that has had a near-death experience and has also done DMT.
Yeah,
and then you could ask.
True.
I hear some of, like, when I watch, there's videos all over YouTube about DMT experiences, and it sounds really similar to the near-death, like when I hear them. So.
Yeah, and I think they've obviously proven that we obviously know that that's what your brain releases when you die. So maybe ultimately we start to get there. If you're not open enough spiritually, it takes that actual moment of death to kind of be thrown into all of that. But if you are open enough, or maybe you ingest some DMT before you're dead, then you kind of, you have that gateway. I mean, I haven't had an NDE, so I can't say, but from what I did experience with DMT, it is definitely not exactly like, but much like. I've only done it once, but same thing with like ayahuasca. Friends of mine that have done that and had, insane experiences with that. That's a little more nature focused, but I still think ultimately the communication that's occurring, the way that the communication occurs, and a lot of the visuals, at least as far as seeing beyond our realm and, the physical limitations that we have here in this dimension are concerned.
What do you feel like when, it's interesting, because I've had patients and things like that, and a lot of the people that I've talked to who've experimented with DMT will tell me that like when you have a near-death experience, it's very real and concrete and lucid like this is. And with DMT, they'll say there's kind of this high sort of feeling. And I didn't have any sort of high feeling. I felt just as lucid as I feel right now.
I think DMT is definitely more of a probably visual experience. It was not the same as like a lucid dream. But at the very beginning of it, when it first hit, I saw the world around me broken down into the tiniest little specks of light and energy, and all of the everything just formed geometrically around me, and slowly that reality started to fade just into a peaceful, white light euphoria. Now I had friends that had spoken. I don't. You don't do DMT alone. I had friends that day that had spoken to angels or their spirit guides, those which had already kind of connected with that in their mindful practices on a day-to-day, had immediate connections with that. But at that point in my life, I'd been open to these things, but I hadn't been deeply practicing these things, so I didn't have quite as intense of a interactive experience as far as like with other beings are concerned. But I don't know if that answered your question. I'm a drunk and you walk, and I ramble a lot.
I do too.
It does kind of lay it out how they're, what the differences and commonalities are.
Yeah, there's some people saying in the chat that there are definitely some common. There's some people who said that they've had both and they're not the same. Like DMT opens it up, but it's not quite the same. So yeah. I also probably think that, some near-death experiences are very different from person to person, but there's a lot of commonality. I want to invite Vegan onto the show, and Magi. Vegan, you've been listening for a bit. I didn't mean to keep you muted. Sorry about that, man.
No, you're good.
So go ahead and throw in your 2 cents on all this. If you had a near-death experience or know someone, and well, actually, I know this answer, but go ahead and did you have anything like this?
No. I had a near-death experience, and it was more about changing my life in this tangible world. The reason people know me as the Vegan Warrior is because of my near-death experience. I made a complete 180 after my near-death experience. I was an atheist for a long time, and I was a heavy meat eater. Once I had my near-death experience, like literally, they said if I wouldn't have gone to the hospital maybe a day sooner, I would have died from a blood clot. And after that put me on a path to become conscious, to drop my atheism, and to embark on a lifestyle of living cruelty-free. So I literally live this lifestyle because of my near-death experience. Well, it was the eye-opener for me.
It did that for me too. Mine, it completely changed the way I thought. It took a little bit, but as it sinks in, I seem to try harder with most of all the things you said. I'm trying really hard to stop eating meat too, but I haven't got to that point yet.
Everybody walks their own path, you know
Right.
what I mean? So it's not one of these things where something that works for one person should be universally applied to every human being. We're all unique in nature. My awakening was to learn to become compassionate and empathetic, because prior to that I was a complete asshole. So I literally did a 180.
I love how authentic you are about it. You just come right out. You're like, man, it does completely change you. I mean, it really rocked our relationship. I didn't know if Don and I were going to make it, but that we just decided we weren't going to be in that percentage of people who broke up over a near-death experience, and it's been so good for both of us. We've both grown and sorted through it together. And I just have so much respect for him for sticking with it, because a lot of people leave.
Yeah.
I think our reactions matter just as much as their reactions too. That comes up a lot in the Mandela Effect groups of us not getting along with our significant others, and I find myself getting too frustrated too quickly, and I have to remember that that's not going to get us anywhere. So
Right.
Let me introduce Magi and let him throw his 2 cents in here. Magi, I know you wanted to maybe talk about some near-death experience stuff, so jump on in.
Yeah, I've everyone's got a very activating story there, by the way. I never had a physical one, but I had a dream as a child. I remember I was probably 8 to 10. The whole family was in a car, brothers and sisters and mother and father, and we got hit in the car. And I remember experiencing a lot of the same things that Uni and Penny have said. But I mean, later in my life, as I got into other things like dreams and the dream attention, I remember recalling that experience. And that's not really all I wanted to say on it. But yeah, I do see a connection there. That same similar feelings that when I actually had it, but it wasn't a physical one. I was dreaming as a child, and it happened.
Hmm.
You mean more like an outer body experience? Would you say?
Yeah, the similarities that everyone's saying. In that dream as a child, I actually had that dream as a child that the whole family was hit in a car. I could sense coming out of the body, seeing the body below me.
Oh, wow.
As a little kid, never really even was afraid. I wasn't old enough. But now, then, as that applied later in my life, and as an example, I started feeling myself move out of my body in practicing of the dream attention. I recall reflecting back on that moment as that dream as a child, and also everybody's story here kind of connected and very, very familiar.
Penny, can you go out of body now at this point and go back and visit? Or like, do you have an opening now that you can cross over?
Yes. I can. It's so funny that you asked that. I was thinking that when he was talking about his dream.
That's what made me think about it, is him saying that.
I can, if I sit, there's a window in our house that I can sit in front of where the sun shines in real bright, or if I go out and sit on the back porch. And if that sun is on my face, I have to make sure I'm sitting very solidly because I'm just gone. And it's funny because I have a friend that does research with IANS, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Hold on one second. Hey, Don, what's that? Remember when we watched the movie Interstellar and they did that thing with noise so that it sounded like it made the silence louder, and you told me that was a particular kind of noise? Did you say it was pink noise? You not remember? I don't know what it was. It just made the silence in space sound louder, and you said that is this particular hertz of noise, or you had a name for it because you're a sound guy. He'll have to ponder.
Yeah, when he thinks about it, jump back in. But
yeah, I just wanted to catch him before he ran away again. But yeah, I can. In fact, when I first got back, I had to remind myself to stay in my body, and I have a friend that does. He's a hypnotherapist, and he loves working with me because I'm just gone. I'm so easy, he can just say sleep and I am just gone. And so I have to, he'll tell me, he's like, where are your feet, Penny? Where are your feet? And so I have to remember to stay in all the way to my feet because I tend to kind of exist up here if I'm not careful. And you need to be all in your body. It's important. I didn't used to think so, but I've done this since I was a kid. I think I'm more aware of it now, and I'm able to. Now I kind of have a better idea of where to go. Sometimes I go back to my childhood. Sometimes I go back to the light. It just kind of depends on what I need. I'm much more Don will even tell you, I'm much more childlike since my NDE. Things are new to me, and I have this kind of wonder for things, and just this search for knowledge. And I think that really, an NDE or a spiritually transformative event will really bring that out in a person.
Yeah, you guys want to go ahead and comment? I'm going to back up and let you guys start talking.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of stories about near-death experiences from other people. I've heard, some scary ones. I've heard some happy ones. Do you interview people or speak to a lot of people about near-death experiences in your work and stuff?
I didn't. Well, I mean, as a nurse, of course, I've been with a lot of patients as they've crossed over, and I always found myself wondering. I was hoping they weren't. It's so funny because I always believed in God. I always hoped it was true. So to say I believed is probably a little loose, but it seemed right. It seemed to me like there was something bigger than this, and that, you know, how could you have such order in a universe by accident? That never made sense to me. I remember when I was teaching, I used to teach at the technical college, and you know, I taught pathophysiology, things like that. And the first day of class one time, I took little medicine dosing cups and I passed them out to everybody in the class. They were empty, and I poured Mountain Dew into each of them. And so I had all the students drink the Mountain Dew, and I said, "Now don't swallow it. Swish it around in your mouth, and then swallow it." And so they all did it, and I said, "Okay, now spit in the cup." And so then they all spit in the cup, and so I poured all the spit back into the bottle, and I said, "Okay, now put your cups back out. I'm going to give you all this so that you can drink it." And they said, "Well, you know, we're going to drink that. That's everybody's spit." And I said, "Well, no, that's Mountain Dew. It has all the ingredients. It has all the chemical components of Mountain Dew. It's Mountain Dew." And they said, "No, it's not Mountain Dew." And I said, "Well, if we leave it set for like how many million years, do you think it will then be Mountain Dew? Because, you know, all the little disaccharides and everything are there for it to be Mountain Dew. So eventually it will grow and it will be Mountain Dew." You know, it sounds laughable when you say it like that, but that's the whole theory that everybody wants me to believe. And I always tell this story on my daughter. My daughter was really little, like just talking, 2, maybe 3. And her brother was a year and a half, maybe 2 years older. And Laura wanted so bad to not have a vagina. She wanted to have a penis. And this was her big thing.
Oh, shit.
And I said, "Sweetheart, boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. And one is not lack of the other. One is its own special thing." And she said, I don't want a vagina. I want a penis." And so I asked her one day, I said, "Why? Why do you want a penis?" And she said, "Well, because I want to pee standing up." I said, "Well, shoot, girl, if that's all you need to do, let me help you." So I took the little potty seat apart and I put it in the bathtub and I pulled her pants down and I stood her over it and I said, pee standing up, do it, you know, and so she pees and it runs all down her leg. And she says, "No, Mom, I want to aim it." And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to take practice. So one day she's sitting, God hope she'll die if she finds out I told this. So one day sitting in the bathtub. She's sitting in the bathtub with her younger brother, who's just a baby at that point. And I'm putting the clothes into the hamper, and I hear her. She shrieks, Mom, I did it. I growed a penis." Don is going to kill me for telling the story. And so I come running in, and she and Jake are both looking between her legs, you know. And I said, "Oh, honey," I said, "that's not a penis. That's just extra skin that God gives little girls." And she says, "No, Mom, if we water it, it will grow."
How's that theory working out?
It's not. It's never going to be a penis, right? You know, even having all the right ingredients, it's not going to be Mountain Dew.
They've got these things called she funnels now that you can use.
Yes.
You know, you can stand and pee, ladies.
They're called urinals.
Urinals.
Urinal, yeah.
A girdle. Yeah.
Urinal, absolutely.
Excellent.
Or you can practice for years and work out your aim. I don't know. But the whole point of that was, you know, I always had this conflict with people telling me, well, you know, if you put the right ingredients together for years and years and years, they will grow and become something completely different. And I just never bought it. I just thought I've never seen that flesh out in life ever. You know, we are perfectly created. If there was just a little bit less percentage of oxygen in the air, if there was just a little bit more, you know, whatever, we wouldn't exist. It's such a finely tuned thing. And I have never seen perfection come from chaos. Never.
You're right. We've, like on my channel, we strive to answer the question of how in a universe full of matter, anything could just start moving itself. I mean, we've delved deep into this. We've had like 6-hour sessions talking about this. And you're right. Like I was like vegan. I was an atheist because I was so scientific. I mean, that's why I was an atheist. I had to have everything explained perfectly to me, or I didn't accept anything that was said. You know, you have to have an equation, you have to have an example, or I'm not going to even follow it. And I was doing such a disservice to myself, you know, and I'm happy I had the near-death experience because you know, when Vegan said, you know, it kind of changed him, and I was talking about how mine changed me, you know, it would be horrible if I still closed my mind to all these other things, you know. And I liked how you said that about life spawning from nothing.
Yeah.
In a universe without something, you know, how does life just spawn like that?
Well, and what, you know, even if you could explain all of that to me, then why beauty? Why beauty? There's no reason for beauty. You know, I mean, people say, oh, for reproduction, you know, animals, the more beautiful animals are more likely to reproduce. And I'm like, that doesn't explain sunsets, you know, there's a lot that it doesn't explain. There's really no reason for beauty. We could live in a black and white world and we would all still exist. But there's beauty, and there's something so spiritually huge about beauty. And there's emotion. We could do all of this without emotion, but we're so fine-tuned to connect to each other. You know, I mean, I don't have to be connected intimately, spiritually with somebody to have sex with them and reproduce, but it's such a rich experience when you do. And I just think, what a sweet and wonderful gift to give us, this gift of connection, you know, so that we don't have to reproduce void of intimacy. You know, I just, you can't explain that to me.
Well, I think one of the problems is mankind is on this quest to try to understand and know all things, when in reality, I don't think we're meant to know all things. I think there are things that just is.
Yes.
And I mean, and too often when we don't know something, we fill in blanks.
Right.
And we start filling in these blanks, and then we get other people to believe into these ad hoc ideas of what's real and what's not. And masses of people begin to believe in it. But the issue is no one really knows, you know? I mean, how can you explain to me the Big Bang if you weren't there? You know?
Right.
How can you tell me any of that stuff? Now, I understand that we can imagine and we can create ideas of what we think something is, but that does not always make it true.
Right.
Too often our ideas are being passed off as truth when really no one knows. And I think that's part of the human condition. That's one of our biggest problems. We tend to accept things as truth simply because it's popular and it's consensus behind it.
Well, and I think a lot of people, you know, I found that every person that I've run across so far that's been an atheist has asked me this one really hard question, and it's been, well, what about kids dying, and what about children being born horribly disabled? You know, what kind of God would allow that? And it was so funny. I don't remember asking that question when I was there, but I remember getting the answer. And, you know, it was shown to me that we choose this life we come into. Now, it's not all laid out. It's not all laid out that we're going to sit down and have this conversation tonight. You know, there are diverging paths and all this sort of thing. But people that come to this world horribly disabled, or children that come and they die very young, those are the most sacrificial spirits. You know, a child that comes to this world with cerebral palsy that is not going to be able to move himself or feed himself or speak, that spirit comes in completely sacrificially and selflessly to teach everybody else something bigger. And I have such respect. You know, I see those kids in the wheelchairs, and I've worked with them, and I've had patients that have just had, young patients that have had horrible things. And I'm always so thankful. I'm like, oh, thank you so much for choosing this sacrificial life to teach me. You know, who am I to deserve that? And to me, that makes perfect sense, that, you know, that since we get to choose, we could choose anything.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder how far spiritually advanced those people are to choose that kind of life.
Well,
They're
apparently we're
definitely
crazy for choosing Earth. So, you know, many people believe that, believe in all this, believe that Earth is the ultimate test of, you know, just the worst, the lowest vibration of physical existence. So here we are making the best of it. Cheers to that.
Well, she said that when she crossed over, there was a large mob of people that were a legion of people that were cheering her on. And part of that makes me think that's true, that, you know, just because we're down here, we're kind of like the lucky ones that decided to come have this experience, even though it seems hard and crappy while we're here.
Sure.
You know, they're not all signing up to come down. There's legions of people that are like, good job, man, go for it. They don't want to do this. So there's something to be said. Or
I would have.
yeah, you're. Well, I think all of us are crazy that we'd volunteer.
I think
everybody on this panel is a crazy person. It's like, I'll go.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
And it's a big classroom here. You're here to learn something.
Well, you know, and when you're in spirit on the other side, you know everything, but knowing is different than experiencing. You know, I can tell you that, like one time when I went into anaphylaxis, they gave me the paralytic and the drug. So the paralytic stops you from breathing. You can't move. You can't open your eyes or anything. And the drug that they gave me to like knock me out didn't work. So I was awake and I couldn't tell anybody. And so I'm laying there completely paralyzed, and Don said tears just rolling down my cheeks, and they're intubating me. And I felt, you know, them put the tongue blade in my mouth, and I knew what all the sounds were because I'm a nurse. So I hear the tongue blade snap, and I'm like, oh geez, they're going to intubate me. And I'm trying to move or yell or something to let them know that I'm awake, and I can't do it. And I feel the tube go down, and I feel them miss, and I feel them pull it back out. Now I can tell you what that's like, and you can empathize with me, and I can see that you all are empathizing just by the looks on your faces. Yeah. But until you've experienced it, you don't know it in fullness. And that's why we come here. Sure, we have all the knowledge on the other side and we understand everything, but void of experience, you don't really understand it. So we come here to have this poignant life full of loss and hope and adventure, because it really does advance our spirit, you know, and then we take that back and it makes everything richer. And I really think that God created us so that he could really understand himself, you know, because when you kind of know everything and you've created the universe, you know, there are just experiences that you're not going to have. But then you make, you know, me, and you're like, I'm going to send her off into the world, and oh, look, you know, she's really struggling with this, and I'm God, I've never really struggled with that. And it's interesting for him to experience that through me. So I think
you bring up
very much in the game.
I think you bring up a very good point. With my near-death experience, I had a question answered with my near-death experience. Why are we here? I actually believe today, what's today's date? May 18th, 2017, I know my purpose.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems is a lot of us don't know our purpose. But when I had my my near-death experience, I was able to find that answer. And that answer is to witness God's creations and to express unconditional love. Those are the only two things why I exist on this planet. And everything else is nothing but a byproduct of those two things. Witness God's creation, express unconditional love. That has set me on my path, and I think that was probably the purpose of my personal near-death experience.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, I can see just from your description of who you were before and now this selfless path that you're leading, you know, how it really has just completely turned you around. It's so interesting to remember, like if you've had an NDE and you go back and you remember who you were. And I remember how selfish I was. I mean, I wasn't like neglecting other people. I was taking care of other people, but I was doing it all with this expectation of something in return. And I was chronically bitter for not getting it.
Absolutely.
And now it's different. I just see how beauty is manifested by my just giving and not expecting anything. It's so much better.
Yep.
You know, I'm not.
And the crazy part is when you don't think about it, that's when it comes. But when you expect it, when you create these expectations for life, it usually lets you down. You know, so when you stop creating expectations, that's when all the wealth and the influence and everything comes.
It's
So
like,
I don't look for blessings. I don't look for blessings anymore. I just do.
you just, you know, I came back and I was like, because I really struggled for a while. I struggled really, I had terrible depression and homesickness. I have never had homesickness like I had when I came back. I was really hoping that if I had another anaphylactic attack, I would die, because I felt so lost and alone because I wasn't with God anymore. I mean, it rocked my world. And it took me until about March of this year to finally say, okay, I'm going to stop isolating. I'm going to get out there. And I had been invited to speak at the IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies, meeting in Cincinnati. And I had been asked several times, and I had just been like, oh, I don't think I can do it. I'm scared to get up in front of people. And I don't know. I had had an anaphylactic attack in December, and that one was really bad, and ended up with a really bad infection afterwards. And it just, I didn't know if I was going to recover from that one. And I remember laying here and the home health nurse coming and all of these things, and I thought, I feel like if I don't step out and do something huge, this is going to be what it's going to be like for me until I die. And so I called the lady up at IANS and I said, okay, I'd like to come speak. And stepping out and doing that, which was my purpose here, was to share this and to give people a glimpse into what it's like. That seems like that's a very important, and for me to encourage people in that. And I got out there and I went, and Don was freaking out because I didn't have notes written, and he's like, what are you going to say? And we're there the day before, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should make an outline or something. And he's like, babe, you got to have notes. You got to get this down. What if you forget, because my memory stinks. And so I made a basic outline, and I got up there, and I think the only thing I used it for was my name and how old my kids were, because I couldn't remember those things. But the near-death experience was totally clear, and it just was a great experience. And after that, I did Karen Swain's show, and now, I'm doing this show, and I'm writing for the 2 books, and everything just in my taking that step that was asked for me to take, and believing that, okay, I'm going to be part of this purpose that you say I'm supposed to be part of, even though I don't think I'm equipped to do it, has completely changed everything in my life. So I didn't come back like Vegan did and like totally have it all together and think, okay, I'm going to stop being a jerk and go forward. And it's taken me a while.
No, it doesn't happen that way. It's gradual. It's a gradual growing. It's kind of like you're a seed and you're just growing. And it wasn't like I got over this near-death experience and had all the answers. I just had to open up.
Though? Did you know like right away what your purpose was?
No. Well, I don't think I thought about it. The moment I started thinking about it is when I knew it. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off.
No, I think I was. You had made a point that we all have our own journey and we all find our own path, and we're of different timelines. I think we've got a lot of the same stepping stones along the way, just in different order. And I wanted to touch on you mentioning the depression and anxiety. I feel like that's something that affects the majority of us who are awakened. And for me, it was actually what led me down this path. My depression in this world, this life had gotten, I was just in college at the time. It had gotten so bad that I was not only acting crazy, but, having some thoughts that are certainly the darkest thoughts I've ever had in my life. And it was that led me to just clean eating and trying to get a control of, my mind, body, spirit balance. And now here I am, decade and some change later. But I think it's, important to talk about that depression, because there's a lot of people out there that are watching and feeling the same way, that don't understand that that's part of being in a world that we don't necessarily, or that we know we don't fully belong in. And
this is not home. We think this is so real and this is really happening, and it's not.
Could I pose a question though? when it comes to depression and those kind of things, is it possible that, and I'm just asking a question, don't beat me up, is it possible that that's not a true awakening? Because when you're awake, you know that the ideas of others, the expectations of others, this manufactured world is not real. And depression has a lot to do with feeling isolated and feeling disconnected from the delusion. I mean, when you wake up, you kind of see everything as a delusion with reality within that delusion. And you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of like I find a lot of folks who are in that awakening class who are suffering from some type of disconnection with others as kind of having one foot in the delusion and one foot out of the delusion.
I wonder
You know?
if people with NDEs, it's really common for them to suffer with depression afterwards
Right.
because of that disconnection from source, because there you're right with it. There's no separation. And technically there's no separation here either, but there
Yeah.
it's so self-evident. And so I think maybe we're putting a label on it of depression when really what it is homesickness and longing for home.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Because we want to all be accepted. Yeah, we all want to
Yeah.
be connected and accepted. But the reality is, it's kind of like the true connection is something that is, I don't know. I'll keep that opinion to myself.
Well, I see that some people in the
Don't do
chat,
that. That's your
some people in the chat were
Mhm.
saying that they actually came back depressed. That because now they want to be on the other side. They're like, oh, I got a glimpse of what it really is, and now I got to go back to this crappy world. That sort of thing.
Okay.
I think it's just homesickness. I
Yeah.
really do, and it takes a while to get over it.
Magi, you've been so quiet. You got anything you want to say on this?
I just had a question for Penny. The description you gave of the God entity, and I know you went into more than one near-death experience, but when I know you're saying you communicate, do you see the same thing in the near-death experience?
Magi, you broke up a little bit. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, she gave a description of the God entity earlier. Communicate now, say if it's in a dream or in a prayer or whatever, or however it comes. Is it the same entity? Does it look the same, or
Yeah,
or
like
is it
when
not,
it's very much the same. It's that God entity, it's so funny because everybody's like, well, we are God. I hear that a lot, we're on the spiritual, well, we're all actually God. And I'm like, no, I was with God and I definitely was not God. God was something bigger and encompassing, and I had God in me, and I was with God, but I was not God. So when
that description,
go ahead.
and this is just a question, do you think you could have possibly manifested that description of that entity from within you? Or do you sense it was a totally different, separate entity?
No, because I think what's really interesting is when I got there, I was so shocked by so much of what I saw, because it wasn't anything like what I would have expected. And you'll find that when you talk to people and when you do research collectively on groups of people who've had near-death experiences, so many of them come back with a completely different understanding than what they had of what God would be before they went. Like I grew up, and this isn't to bash any particular religion, but I grew up in the first real formative years of my life Catholic. And so I really had this mental image, even as a child, that God was up there and he was kind of sitting on a log, and he was a man, and he had a long white beard, and he had this boat paddle. And when I got up there, he was just going to whack the crap out of me for everything I had done wrong. And I had always been scared of a vengeful God, always. You know, even when I wasn't Catholic anymore. And I don't remember anybody in the Catholic Church teaching me that. That was just what I believe, what I thought. And so then when I got up there, and he wasn't even actually a person or a he, though he did seem masculine in his energy, but that may just be because that's my understanding of God. And I think maybe that's what you're asking. Did I project some of my
Yes.
own understandings
Yes.
of what I thought God was? But as far as, you know,
Yes,
he
he
wasn't
did.
a person, and I expected him to be. Um, he wasn't even a physical form. He was just light and love, and he was an energy. He wasn't a person. So yes and no. Yes, he was masculine, and
Okay.
I there was nothing that leads me to believe that he was a particular gender. I've just called him his whole life, and
Mhm.
that energy felt masculine.
Uni, when you heard the the boom, oh, was it only a sound? I mean, you didn't get no visual?
Well, I mean, I got a feeling through me. I mean, it's real hazy right about there. It was almost like it was a lot going on, and I was like, if you ever been in a explosion or like I guess you probably never been in an explosion. I don't know why I just asked you that. When I was in the military, I'd been near some, but like if a grenade goes off or something, or a mortar, but it like shakes and shocks you, and it knocks you kind of away. Oh, on Saving Private Ryan, where he's walking on the beach and there's this big boom and your ears start ringing and you're just like completely numbed at all your senses. I mean, I was kind of like, I mean, I was at a place where my senses were really sharp, but I was so overloaded that yeah. I mean, I did feel it though, and hear it, and it's hard to describe.
I understand that, but it's still, I'm really looking to see if it's manifested. Vigan, how did you feel like that? You feel like you could have possibly been manifesting it from within you?
I feel like it. I know you asked Vegan, but his video's out. I feel like it's a possibility. I leave my mind open to every possibility. So, yeah, could I have been in a dream state, or could it have been my subconscious generating this experience? It's possible, yeah. Was that? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it reminded me of Dr. Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon that had a near-death experience and ended up completely, you know, changing his entire life and his career path after that. And what I found so fascinating about his story, which is very, very similar to Penny's that we heard, but he had a female. A beautiful female figure that, you know, was comforting him and speaking to him telepathically. And come to find out, after he had awoken from a 7-day coma, this was his biological sister that he had no idea that he had never seen in his life. He's telling the story to the family, and one of the family members, you know, figured it was a relevant time to bring up that information. So that was something that I found to be truly profound, because up until that point, I really had been questioning if this was something we were manifesting within us. Now, he could very well have that connection with her and manifested that unknowingly, but that goes into a whole nother level.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When I was there, I saw myself in utero. And I remember that it was warm and I'm floating in this place. And I remember being very small. And I remember feeling like kind of anxious or nervous. And then this really bad taste came. And then the really bad taste made my body hurt all over. And I didn't know what that bad taste was. And then, you know, it would go away. And then I would feel kind of floaty and relaxed. And then, you know, a few hours later, I would have that sort of tension, anxiety feeling. And then the bad taste would come and I would feel better. And then I started looking forward to the anxious feeling. because I knew the bad taste would come and then the good feeling would come. Well, I went to my mom and I asked her about this.
Was it medication?
She was smoking while she was pregnant.
Oh.
Now that was something that I didn't know. And I was like, and I've never smoked before. And I knew that taste. And I was like, oh, I know. And I've always known what smoking tasted like, and I've never smoked. And I just never put it together. And then I had this near-death experience, and I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember having that anxious feeling, and then the bad taste, and then the relaxing, and the anxious feeling. And so in my life, what's really interesting is coming up through my life, I really struggled with anxiety, and my way of dealing with that was kind of detaching from myself. And so I could be having like I had appendicitis and didn't even realize I had appendicitis until my appendix almost ruptured because I was so disconnected from my physical body because of anxiety. I had learned how to do this disconnect so I could have a relaxed feeling. And that had all been taught to me in utero. And so I think it's really important that that's an idea we get our brains around, because all of those cortisol, levels that go up when you're having anxiety or when you're fighting with somebody when you're pregnant, the baby is subject to those hormones as well. And you can really accidentally, without understanding or knowing it, bring a very tense, anxious baby into the world just because they're used to these big hormone fluctuations. And then when they get here, they don't have the cigarette to calm them down or the drug to calm them down. So they come in very raw feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, PMH Atwater is doing some really cool research about pre-birth memories, and just a wonderful, wonderful researcher. And she does a lot on childhood near-death experiences and childhood past life memories. So I can't imagine people haven't heard of her, but she's out there. She's been out there forever, and she's kind of the quintessential resource to all of that information.
Yeah, actually, and with Reiki, it's a common technique a self-healing technique to put yourself back in utero, and heal whatever it is that your mother may have been passing along to you at that point in time. My Reiki master had a rough relationship with her mother when she was younger, and come to find out, her mom was suffering from severe depression before and after her birth. And it wasn't until, she had finally figured out that she could go back and send herself this loving energy at that time in her life where she really needed it, that finally, things started falling into place around her. That's a really, really powerful technique in the energy healing circles.
Yeah, people don't realize, I know a lot of people who've had really traumatic childhoods, or not even really traumatic childhoods, just maybe didn't get the support and the affirmation that they needed. And people think it sounds really silly, but I'm like, if you had a really hard childhood and you didn't really get a childhood, the park's just down the road, and you can go down there and you can swing on the swings, and you can play on the slide, and you can run, and you can chase your husband around or your kids around, and you can you can color, and you can put your pictures up on the fridge. You can love that inner child and give that, because you need it. If you don't resolve it, you're going to go through life unresolved. So
Yep.
I always tell people, just for the love of God, just give it to yourself. Spend 2 weeks loving that inner child and giving yourself all of that information, and color your picture and put it on the fridge and write good job on it yourself. Because we need those experiences, and you don't forget any of that. All of those babies that are left to cry for hours because their parents are doing God knows what. That memory is still in your brain, and you're still working through that. So you've got to find people in your life that are affirming, and that if you didn't have an affirming family, then instead of sitting around and lamenting that you didn't have an affirming family and making it an excuse for bad self-injurious behavior, get out there and find some people who are affirming, friend up, have some of the qualities that you need so that you can have some good in this life, and pursue your purpose and get past all those old past hurts. But it's just a matter of people think it's silly, and I'm like, it's not silly to be 47 years old and go swing on the swings. It's really not.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And it's a wonderful gift. And I don't know of any good husband or friend out there who would not go to the park and push you on the swings because you needed to do that for yourself. You know?
Yeah, that's cool.
That is cool.
Whoa, silence. That's weird.
I know, right? And we're all okay with it, you know?
I was in thought.
No, I was actually talking, but it was muted.
You muted.
I muted it out.
Turns going on and on. Nobody hears it.
I saw your lips moving.
Yeah, sorry about that. I get into the stories. Like, I have never let a guest talk as long as Penny talked uninterrupted ever on this show. Like, you probably had a 30-minute spiel where I didn't say a word, and that doesn't happen much on this show. That was a heck of a story. I can't interrupt this. So that was pretty amazing. As far as, some people did tune in because they want to talk about Mandela Effect. Do you think, Penny, that maybe since you crossed over, did you get any ideas of what the heck the Mandela Effect is, or if it has to do something with near-death experiences? Did we die and a bunch of us shifted to another place?
Well, you and I were talking about, I had never heard of the Mandela Effect until you said it. And then I looked it up because I didn't want to seem stupid. And so, because I'm like,
appreciate you doing a little research. Okay.
I know, right? I've been on the other side. You'd think I know this. And so I looked it up and I thought, oh my gosh, I remember Mandela dying in prison too. And I thought maybe I was crazy and just misremembered this. And so I asked Don, I said, babe, do you remember, back in the Wayback Machine when Mandela died in prison and they had a funeral and everything? And he said, babe, that never happened. I said, I'm telling you, I remember that. And apparently a bunch of other people remember it too. So I was telling Taryn earlier, he asked me what I had to offer on the Mandela Effect. And I said, ever since my near-death experience, my son, that first Thanksgiving after I had my reaction, so the first reaction was August of 2014. So that November, David said, oh, I hate Thanksgiving. We always fight at Thanksgiving. And I just looked at him like he had three heads. I said, what are you talking about? We're a pretty low conflict family. And generally when we get together, we're all kind of funny and we play off each other. And, there might be maybe my mom's being irritable or something, but fighting, no, not even really arguing. And I thought, what is he talking about? And so I asked Laura, I said, do we fight at Thanksgiving? And she's like, no. And Jake said, we fight at Thanksgiving all the time. I hate Thanksgiving. We're always fighting at Thanksgiving. And there is not one Thanksgiving that I can remember ever fighting. And those boys swear to it and say that they dread Thanksgiving because of it. And I'm thinking, well, it must be true to them. Otherwise they wouldn't dread Thanksgiving. So when we had this last Thanksgiving, I said to him, like, look, we didn't fight. And David's like, we fight every year. I said, we did not fight. What are you talking about? But they have this entrenched memory that we always fight at Thanksgiving. So that's my personal Mandela.
That happened after your near-death experience?
After my near-death experience.
Ooh.
Something got screwed up in the time continuum. I don't know what happened, but apparently in the other realm, we suck as a family, but we're good at this one.
There's lots of people that come back and say, oh, their husband told the same story 1,000 times, and all of a sudden it just shifted one day, and he has no idea that if you've been married, that your spouse tells the same damn story all the time.
That's right.
And all of a sudden it shifted after like 20 years. It was a different story, and they were like, I'm positive it was the opposite. And so I mean, you're not alone to think that you're now. Of course, being a kid, I always think my mom was arguing and fighting. So,
my kids are grown; they're in their 20s.
Okay, fair enough. Because we always think my mom's jawing too much. So it was like, I think that's just being a kid. That's universal.
Yeah, that's
I don't know, guys. What do y'all think about that?
I've been doing some looking into the near-death experience being related to Mandela thing, and a lot of it's a commonality. A lot of people that have had you've said it a lot too. it seems like it's linked in a way, at least for some people. So I think we could be onto something with this, definitely.
I still think that link is just, you know, the awareness and the awakening. And, you know, we find that there's a higher percentage of us that have these certain types of experiences, and, you know, near-death experiences isn't necessarily the first thing we've questioned, you know, what our commonalities are. But I think it's just, you know, because we all have reached that level of higher vibration and awareness that's allowing us. Are we shifting into another alternate dimension? That I really don't know, but I still think it, you know, all boils down to frequency and vibration.
Yeah, I definitely think you're onto something there too. As people wake up and as they become more open to spirituality, I think we'll make a lot more progress. Especially now, I'm honestly finding more and more people who, just like Vegan said he was, you know, thought in a very scientific, matter-of-fact way, and then now their minds are open to the spiritual side. And I think people who come from that try to apply the things they used then to the Mandela effect, which I know some people find that silly. At least that's what people tell me. But I think it's worth it, and I think we've made a lot of progress, at least figuring out what could be. We're definitely getting there.
Sure.
You know, oddly enough, the few that I used to search out, I kind of find that a little bit strange, because I've seen those that came from the more religious side will shift more to the digital universe and the scientific side, like the complete flip.
I wonder if there's like an equilibrium happening where a lot more people are going from science, you know?
Well,
I remember Vegan saying, go ahead, I'm sorry, Taryn.
No, go ahead, Magi. Please finish. You don't get a chance to talk ever. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was just saying, it seemed like it went that seesaw effect, you know, not in every case, but I remember when I was searching them out, I heard like what Penny said, or what the Uni said, and what Vegan both said, that they were more like an atheist moving into a spiritual part of it. And I have definitely witnessed on the YouTubes when I was searching them, people that came from a religious side starting to see like the digital, those theories, the digital universe, and coming a lot around more to that area. That was all. I've actually witnessed their testimonies on YouTube, especially when it first hit.
It is interesting to see things like, you know, things that it really opens you up to new ideas and looking for things that you wouldn't have looked for otherwise. Like, oh, there's my cat. Sorry.
Yeah, let me lock that in.
Like sacred geometry and all that stuff is just so fascinating. And I before I would have thought, yeah, whatever. But now I'm really starting to wonder if there's. It's just so cool. When the kids were little, I remember we lived in this little town, and one day I was driving and I found this street that I didn't know was there, and I drove down the street, and beyond the street was this huge field and woods and all this stuff, and I had never seen it before. And I thought, up until today, I thought my world ended right there. And then I drove past, and look, there was all this other stuff, and it reminded me of when I was a little kid. We went on an airplane. I wasn't a little kid, I was like 18, and it was raining. It was pouring, just torrential downpour when we got on the plane, and so the plane takes off, and we go up, and the clouds are terrible, and there's all this turbulence, and we go up, and we get into these black clouds, and we go up, and then there was the sun. And in my life, it never occurred to me that the sun was just on the. I mean, I knew the sun was out. You know what I mean? I never really thought about it. That somewhere over those clouds, it was sunny and beautiful outside. And it was just this whole big enlightenment for me. So now I kind of see life that way. I'm like, yeah, there's this real dark thing in front of you, but just beyond it is that road that you didn't know existed, and that forest just past it, and the sun beyond the clouds, you know?
Kind of like the Truman Show effect there, and with all that.
Yes, yes. You're so good with movie references, Amy.
I'm a nerd. I'm a movie nerd.
I love movies.
But this is coming from a lady that didn't understand the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek.
Hey.
So take that for what it's worth.
Listen, Sassy Pants. I was
I
watching.
was there a little bit, but I haven't seen Interstellar, so I decided to keep my mouth shut.
Look, I see right behind her. She's got a CP30. Is that right?
Close.
Yeah, that was really close.
C3PO. See? I was close. But I knew that's from Star Wars, right?
You got it.
Yeah, you got the right one. Yay!
So are
Hot dog.
That's where the name came from.
Someone in the chat room's asking me about my near-death experience. I said it was a near-death experience just because I didn't know what to call it, but I have been reprimanded because I didn't die. So it's called what was it? A
spiritually transformative event.
There you go. Okay, spiritually transformed. An STE, not an STD. I mixed that up. STE. So that's apparently what I had. So I've been saying a near-death experience, but I think I'm wrong because I didn't die. I just got really, really sick and woke the hell up. So yeah, there you go. I guess I guess there's probably a lot of people that have that happen too. Or you were saying that your outer body experience is kind of similar. That you can travel out of body and go visit this thing and come back. And
yeah.
So I've had outer body experiences under surgery, but never saw anything like you saw. I was just looking at my room I was in.
Well, maybe in that moment you didn't realize you could go look at more.
Yeah, maybe it was.
That's okay.
It's interesting because you guys, as you were talking earlier in the show, a lot of us came from a science background. I was a pretty heavy science guy. I mean, I got science degrees up the wazoo, and I didn't get spiritual till, really spiritual till after that sort of event. And then after the Mandela Effect is really what wiped me out of, I had a spiritual experience where that really helped me not be afraid of death anymore. And I think that just completely changed my life when I'm not worried because there was always for, 40 years I was scared of death. And I might as well ride this thing out and become a cyborg and never die and download into a computer or whatever I want to do. But now I'm not scared at all. I think the other side's going to be awesome.
It is awesome. I really like the thought creation. That was my favorite thing, that I wanted to fly. And so I just thought I'd like to fly. And there I was flying. And it just was so cool. And I've come back with talents that I didn't have before. I always knew a little bit of sign language, but I came back and I just was able to really absorb it. And now I sign it, I look up the words, I've got the signs, and I sign all the songs at church on Sundays, and just this aptitude for language has really blossomed, and being comfortable talking in front of all kinds of people. That's just, I acted in college and stuff, but that's different because you're not you up there. But to be me and be authentic in front of people, that's a huge new skill I'm developing. So it's been really cool to have that. And I really appreciate having it. It wasn't something that I wanted coming back, and now I see that how good it is for me.
Well, a lot of actors use very deep meditation techniques. So really you are yourself if you're really doing the acting thing well. 110% in that emotion.
Yes, exactly.
So it's beautiful to see you back in it because you're rocking this. Thank
you. It's cool to not have a character and just be able to get up and be me. So I wasn't okay with me for a lot of years, and now I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of a mess, and that's really cool, and it's okay. And so are the rest of us, and I just think it's really beautiful that we're all in this together.
I'm at the point where I can't even try to hide me, even when I should.
Yeah.
I keep trying. John's rein it in, babe, rein it in.
I have to be so grateful for the community we have because, all of us can be ourselves here. And it's the first time ever, I think, that I can be It's completely weird, quirky, and fun, and just then turn around and talk about aliens with Unirock for 2 hours, and then just come right back into it like nothing happened, and nobody thinks that's weird there. Like that's completely they're into it. So
they are actually doing a study on people who have seen aliens or had some sort of encounter, and the like the comparative of how many of those people have had near-death experiences, and the amount is crazy high of people who've had near-death experiences who've also had encounters. And it was funny because this friend of mine that's helping with this research, she and I were talking about it, and I said, you know what? It's really funny you would mention that, because when I was in college, we were driving to Garland, Texas to stay with a friend of mine's family for the weekend. And I had this really weird feeling before we left that something terrible was going to happen. And I wasn't a person to worry about those things. And it was so strong, I almost didn't go. And I actually wrote a letter to my mom telling her that I loved her and that if anything happened to me, I just wanted her to know that. And I left it in my dorm room. And so we left and we were driving down the road, and it was a sunny day. I want to say it was a Saturday. And the radio starts acting kind of weird. And we're like, what the heck's, we play with the radio and it's just not coming in right. And the car starts acting kind of weird. And we're out in the middle of nowhere because it's Texas, And so off in the distance are the power lines. And we see these three silver kind of flattish things zoom, over the power lines, and then they didn't turn around. They just came backwards, and we had never seen any kind of aircraft do that. And so we were all totally freaked out, and we're college kids, and nobody's going to believe us, and so we kind of all swore ourselves to secrecy. Well, I got back with those friends probably a month or two ago and said on Facebook, I said, hey, do you all remember that when we were in college and we were driving and we saw, and absolutely, yes, they remembered it. And so I just thought that was so interesting when Barbara told me that so many people who have encounters or see things have also had near-death experiences. The percentage
saying
is
that
high.
reminded me of something you said earlier. You were talking about, your time as a nurse and, experiencing death. Did you ever notice electrical, magnetical, or electromagnetic disturbances at the time of death? Is that something that you picked up on?
We had one patient, and he always is the story I tell. He had esophageal cancer, and he wanted to be a do not resuscitate, and his family just could not accept it. And he was so end stage, and they were saying that no one had ever told him that he had end stage cancer. And we had all the medical records. They were just, I never met a family more in denial than this one. And he was just he was very late stage, actively dying. And so he wanted to sign the DNR paperwork, and they just weren't having it. And I kept trying to explain to them, he has esophageal cancer. If he stops breathing and we intubate him, it will hit that tumor and he'll bleed out, and it will be an awful, ugly, painful death. Don't put him through that. And we couldn't convince him. And finally we convinced him, right? So he's in the room and he's talking to people who have crossed over. And I went to sit in the chair beside his bed because I kind of had this rule. Patients were actively dying. I stayed with them, and I didn't go to funerals. I kind of had to draw my line there, but I always did their post-mortem care, washing the body and getting everything ready. I didn't leave that to the nurses. That felt like my act of completion with that person. And so I go to sit in the chair next to him because I wanted to be with him as he crossed over, and his family had gone out into the waiting room for a little bit, and he said, "Don't sit there." And I was shocked because he was kind of having this conversation with other people on the other side, and I said, you don't want me to sit in this chair? Do you want me to leave? And he said, no, just don't sit there. Jesus is sitting there. What's wrong with you?
Wow.
And I was like, oh goodness, I'm so sorry, I didn't see him. And he just thought it was the oddest thing that I didn't see him. So I went around the other side and I sat on the edge of the bed and I was holding his hand, and his heart stopped beating. And we have to have asystole and at least 2 leads before we can declare somebody dead. And so he had asystole in 1 lead, and then asystole in all 5 leads. And so I went out and got his family. And I said, he's passed. Do you guys want to come back? And so they did. And so I bring them all back, and the wife is there. And Kentucky is a whole different culture with mourning. People will fall on the floor. It's very common culturally for people to pass out, or to just lay in the floor and wail, or to get up in the bed with the patient. And so these cultural things were all new on me. And so she starts this just wailing, and she's over him in the bed, and she's holding on to him. And dang if his heartbeat doesn't come back. Boop, 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 70 sinus rhythm. I'm like, what the heck? You have got to be kidding me. And so she's like, and of course I feel terrible, right? Because I've told her he's dead. And then here he is, he's back. She's like, he's back. It's a miracle. We need to get rid of the DNR. And I'm like, no. And he had been down probably 5 minutes by the time I went and got him. So he comes back. Right. He comes back, and they stay with him for a while, and then they decide they're going to go have dinner. And so I'm like, what are you doing to me? He said, what? I said, I thought you were gone. I went and told him you were dead. You made me look horrible. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, you said Jesus was in the room. There was every indicator that you were really committed. And he's like, I'm so sorry. He said, I heard her crying from the other side, and I had to come back. And so he had come back. So they come back, they visit for dinner, and oh gosh, I was late there that day. So it was probably like 8 o'clock. I should have had left hours ago, or an hour ago at least. And he calls out from his room, and he calls out his brother's name, and he said, okay, I'm ready this time. Let's go. And then he goes flatline. And so I left him. I'm like, I'm going to leave him 12 minutes, So I left him 12 minutes, and then I went and got the family, and they came in and cried and carried on, and he didn't come back. And but it was just interesting that, hear this electrical impulse in the heart, no breathing, nothing, not doing any intervention for 5 minutes. And he doesn't just wake up. He wakes up and he's completely lucid. He's not talking to people who have crossed over. He's right back with us. So yeah, and we've had people that have passed, and it's messed up all of the telemetry monitors in the unit. It's messed with the lights, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I know it seems to be common, and there was I don't know if Dr. Lupo might remember. I feel like it was either in one of his YouTube comments, or it was in the Discord chat room, but somebody recently had shared an article about electromagnetic shifts after near-death experiences. And, I've heard stories of just people that are very, been frying computers and things like that. I've even had experiences of myself. I was going through a very crazy, emotionally intense week, and I went through 3 brand new iMacs in 1 week that just completely fried themselves. So,
holy moly.
Yeah, which isn't, if you're a Mac user, you would know that's not a common thing. I think the Apple Store was starting to think I was like intentionally doing something to to get something out of them. But yeah, it's just crazy, the electromagnetic effects, with all these kind of symptoms.
We have if we go out at night, every time we go out at night, I'll tell Don, I say, you watch. But by the time we go home, one traffic light, well, not traffic light, but street light. One street light will go out, and we'll get close to the street light within 50 feet, and it'll go out. And what's funny is it'll go out, and then we'll get maybe 100 feet past it, and it'll come back on. Yeah. And that always weirds me out. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm killing lights. It's always only one. I think at one time we had 2, but it's always when we're about that distance, and then once we're 100 feet out, it comes back. It's fine.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I know, if I could do it at will, it'd be really cool. Like, if I was in the movies and I could do it, or scare the kids, that would be fun.
What about the rest of you? You guys fry electronics?
No, never have.
My computer's
I think Vegan and Magi are both muted. You guys want to jump in on this?
Go ahead, Vegan.
I mean, I'm just listening. I really don't have a comment.
Oh, she was asking you if you guys fry stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've fried stuff many times. But you know, my surge protectors are usually the ones that catch it, you know, before it fries my computer.
Yeah, I
Used
stay
to-
plugged into Surge too.
Yeah,
I used to
Yeah.
shock stuff left and right. Back when
Mm.
I was really taking
yeah.
care of myself and eating right and the vitamins are high, you create a lot more electricity in your body. And it was just like, I was like the guy from Mortal Kombat, man. It was shooting,
Raiden.
I was
Raiden.
shooting lightning out of my hands, everything I touched. But yeah, but I think that might have been just because my body was charged with electrodes, lights.
That's funny.
What about Magi?
No, nothing to that extreme. And like I said, mine was more in a dream, so it could be totally different. So
Hmm.
no, maybe some static from my hair with a little lightning coming out of the fingertips. But that's about it.
Your beard? Do you get lightning out of
Yeah,
the
my
beard?
beard. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting and very activating there. But
No, actually, they're not the
Okay.
only people that have said it. If you go into the Discord, man, people are like really.
Yeah.
It's a common thing that people are blowing out. Or
yes,
having electrical
I've
disturbances.
A lot of people,
Someone says they kill their watch every time they put a watch on.
yeah.
Magi's
that
voice
one.
alone breaks things. His voice is so deep.
My mom had a near-death experience.
I'm sure he's never heard that. Go ahead.
I was going to say my mom had a near-death experience, and she can't wear a watch.
Made me realize I haven't worn one in over a decade, and it's because I can't, because they always die. I just never thought about it. I gave up on it so long ago.
Well, yeah, I've heard that several times actually. Or people
Yeah.
come back. A lot of people come back with allergies that they didn't have before. You know, there are very few people who have near-death experiences come back healed. I mean, you've got, you know, Anita Morgiani, of course, and but hers is rare. Most people, you know, we were talking about depression, and I think a lot of the depression that I dealt with was because I was so sick and so frequently in the hospital. I mean, when you're in the hospital on a ventilator and in a coma every 4 to 6 weeks, it messes with your mood. And the steroids, gosh, the massive steroids really mess with you. So, you know, I wonder if maybe the transition would have been a little bit easier had I not had all the medical struggles that I had. And, you know, there were like, I really had some processing impairments too. Like my speech was always okay, but like I was telling people I was having trouble knowing what word to say. I would tell Don, I would say, Don, do you remember when we went to the store? And I was putting remember and memory together, kind of having these word smushes. And I think that was just the second time I had anaphylaxis. When they were trying to bring me out of the coma, I kept going into grand mal seizures. And so after that, I really struggled. Like I can remember when speech therapy was coming to the house to work with me, and they would show me a picture of a cow, and I couldn't remember what that thing was called. And I would look at it and I would say milk, and I would have to kind of work around, and I couldn't get cow. Or I would look at chocolate, and I could see the letters Hershey's, and I could see milk that was dark, but I could not come up with the word chocolate. So, I mean, those were pretty big disturbances to have. Or we would go to the gas station, and there'd be 2 gas stations next to each other, and the gas at this gas station would be $1.89, and the gas at this station would be $1.90. And so Don would go to the gas station that was $1.89, and I'd say, why are you going there? It's more expensive. And he'd say, babe, how is $1.89 more expensive than $1.90? And I would say, well, because 8 and 9 is 17, and 9 and 0 is just 9. And it was just this weird glitch in my brain. So I know a lot of people I know a lot of people who've had near-death experiences, and they come back, like I said, with more medical problems. And it takes a while to sort all that mess out. It would be really nice if the light healed all of us, but I find for the most part that's not the case. Those stories get a lot of press, though, because they're rare.
Yeah, I guess since you're now working with the near-death people, that you'll probably be hearing a lot more, you know, working with these books and stuff. And
Yeah.
I bet, it amazes me when people come back healed. Like, you don't hear that very often. To me, it blows me away, but I have never actually met anyone in real life. I don't know if it's just like internet lore,
Right.
But I have heard your story a few times. Well, I'm not as clear though that you actually asked to come back to remember everything, and you do, which is, I mean, it's like becoming psychic when you come back almost. It's all of a sudden you have abilities.
Ask.
What'd you say?
I'm so glad I thought to ask to come back and remember it all.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to remember what to be intentional about when you're in the presence of something that big. So as I'm leaving and I'm crying because I don't want to leave, and I'm just floating backwards so fast, and I remember shouting over the noise. There was this really loud noise, and there was a pop as I came back into my body too, but there was this really loud noise, and I'm yelling. I'm like, please let me remember this. Let me remember this. And I didn't know if he would or not. And then I woke up and my sister's standing there, and I said, I saw what you typed on Facebook, So I'm like, oh yeah, he let me remember it. Cool beans. I'm so glad.
Yeah. I just hadn't. People are saying that they've had similar experiences in the chat, and it's pretty interesting. Do you guys, before we have to round this show down, though, do you guys want to jump in and ask her questions?
I think I got most of mine out already.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
You said you spoke to several different people on the other side. When you did this, because in your conversation, you make it seem like it was kind of tangible and detectable. What did God sound like? What did God look like?
God was just light, just this bright. Imagine the sun times 1,000 in it, but it wasn't hot. It didn't hurt your eyes. He was just light and smell. I was saying that he smelled like frankincense and vanilla, and his resonance was like the key of G on the piano, the lower part of the keyboard.
Was it like an actual voice you heard, or you mean it was like in your head you heard?
It was
Did
telepathic.
you hear a man's voice, or
no?
Some people say it's like a man's and woman's voice combined, and I don't know. So give me an idea.
I just knew his thought. His thought would be in me.
I got you.
And then my grandmother was the same thing. Her thought was in me. So
there was no sound that you could recall hearing. It was more of a telepath.
Oh yeah, I didn't. It's so funny because
well, you were talking about it was in the key of G, but you're hearing it in your head, so it's I'm a little mixed up. Did you hear a tone? You mean?
Yeah, there was like a tone that was present when he was there, and it was like this resounding key of G. But now his voice, as far as when he spoke to me, I didn't hear that. That was just internal.
And because you're using the term he, you got an impression that it was a masculine type of entity?
It felt masculine to me in that he felt paternal, all the things I identify with masculinity. He felt like, he felt like he was strong and in control and paternal. So, there was no gender. He wasn't a person, but that's just how the energy felt to me, and different people describe that different ways. I got the idea that he wasn't real hung up on what we called him, because he's God. He's not really hung up on anything.
No labels.
Yeah, no labels. He's just got too much going on to be worried about that kind of stuff.
He is.
Well, that's what he came to me. He didn't say, "Hey, I'm a man and I'm God." He came to me and he said, "I am." Now those words I did hear, and it was. But it wasn't like voice sounds here.
I find all the sounds so interesting. Vander refers to God as Om, and that was before he understood, the Om, the meaning behind Om in various cultures and spiritual practices. And even talking about earlier, we were talking about, you know, what song's going to be playing when we make our transition. Is it going to be disco? I just find it so interesting that sound is such a part of this experience.
I'm going to request disco.
That's right, Isaac Hayes, baby. Funk, not so much disco.
Get Magi on the mic.
That's too funny. I'm trying to think if I was going to request music. You know, if God was a DJ, what music would I request? Maybe England Dan. That's who I'd want. England Dan.
Sounds like a Joel song. What if God was a DJ?
Excellent job. Excellent job.
Somebody said Bee Gees. I would definitely not ask to hear the Bee Gees. Please no.
Not for eternity.
That's hilarious. Yeah, come on, man. That would be awesome. I bet you could pick your own music going in.
I could go with ABBA, a little Dancing Queen.
There you go.
Get the groove on. Yeah, that might work. We're all dating ourselves here in the chat.
I know. I think I've driven off all the young people that watch this show because all the jokes I make are like about Soul Train and stuff. It's not even gonna get it.
I put a Rambo reference in my story for Karen's book, and my friend that edits for me is like, I think you're going to have to take the Rambo thing out, sweetheart, because most people are not going to get that reference.
Really?
And
you think Rambo's old now? Like
it hurt my soul. I'm telling you, it hurt my soul.
That's hard to believe that young people wouldn't know who Rambo is. I figured that would just it's like the Terminator. It's just there.
Yeah. That's what's wrong with the world, you know.
Yeah, because nobody. That's right.
Says a woman that hasn't seen Star Wars.
I have seen Star Wars.
When you were 40. When you're 40, man.
Well, when I was 46, actually, but.
Oh, wow.
But I did watch it. I was late to the game, I admit. I still don't get what all the hype is about, but.
Because like I said, it was a magical experience when technology sucked, and now technology's better, and little kids probably are not as impressed.
No, Monty Python, Shaun of the Dead, you got me there, but I just am not a Star Wars girl. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm so ashamed.
I want you to go sit and think in silence for a while. Reflect about what you just said.
I probably won't get to go to heaven the next time. I'll probably be a fiery hell someday.
Right. Like that whole prayer thing where you're saying you could go back in time and tell yourself something. Go see Star Wars.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. If I get another chance at life, that will definitely be the correction I make.
Seriously,
you still have time.
Before. I mean, that's like, now I'm thinking about it. Maybe that's why I fell in love with this at such a young age.
I liked the new one, and I liked the whole Force thing with that, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a God thing, and I totally got it. But the old one had that whole desert scene, and I just hate anything with the desert. It was just dry and boring, and it hurts my heart to have to see that. So I need trees, and the one with the snow wasn't quite so bad, but the one with the little people in it, the little hairy guys, Ewoks, yeah, yeah, I like that one because there was a forest. I'm very in tune with what kind of landscape there is, so if they improve the landscape, I probably could get on board. In another reality, you've already seen Star Wars. I doubt it.
Well, I don't know what to say about all that.
I know, I'm hopeless.
All right, well, we are getting near the end of the hour. I am trying to actually keep shows on track a little, even though we don't always ever really. But I'm trying to get better at it. So let me catch you up with some housekeeping things coming up. As far as this Saturday goes, I will be having a show at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Times. I'm aiming at a 2-hour show because I have something I get really important to do at 3. So I will be wrapping this up pretty quick. The show topic, we're going to do a health show. So it'll be about infertility and how to increase the chances of carrying a baby. So there's some natural tricks and some stuff you might not know about infertility. It blows me away that some of my friends and some of my patients, oh man, they would spend like $50,000 at this infertility clinic and with no results, you know. And then we would do some chiropractic stuff and some other stuff, and it was amazing, you know, for like $200. Then they got pregnant a month later. It was like, you know, I cannot believe that people don't go the natural route first before they go spend all the money at the clinics. It just blows me away. So anyway, we're going to talk about that stuff.
They don't know.
No, they don't. And then hopefully we'll just, you know, key them into, hey, there's some other stuff you can do, especially, you know, you want to start a family and you want to increase your chances of carrying a baby. We're going to talk about that. Or, you know, if you've had a lot of miscarriages, and we're going to talk about that, why that's happening. There's some reasons you might not know about. Also, oh, thank you, Earth Daughter. She just donated. I appreciate the 1111.
1111.
Now,
Like,
everybody's donated tonight. I do want to thank everyone. A Ray of Sunshine threw a bunch of sunshine and donated multiple times. Thank you. Karen, always, every week. Magi, I don't know why you keep donating when you're on the panel. Same with you, Ewok, but appreciate it. And Dana, same with you. Van Jojo, always every week keep donating. So I really appreciate that, guys. It keeps the lights on, since especially since YouTube has tanked in the toilet for ad money. It is keeping things going. I really appreciate that. Also, if you're going to shop this week, please go through my link on Amazon. It makes a huge difference. It doesn't cost you any extra money. So if you don't have any money and you're going to go shop on Amazon anyway, it's a great way to donate to the show. It really does bridge the gap since YouTube stinks now. So I would appreciate that. Just go through, click my link, then go. It'll take you like one of my books. You can ignore my book, go shopping, and as long as you do it within 24 hours and close the sale, I'll get a little piece of that. I really appreciate that. So now that we've done the housekeeping on the show, understand also, if you're new to the show, we do a chat right after this. We're going to drag Penny kicking and screaming over to the Discord, and we do not, you know, I got this email from Cynthia Sue Larson, was like, every time you say Discord chat, I don't want to go. And I was like, I know it's the worst name ever for like a spiritually enlightened group. And she's like, well, you know, the words hold too much power. So we're going to change it over to, we're going to just re-nickname it, even though it says Discord. We're going to have to come up with a positive, happy name, like Camp Happy Land or Harmony Chat or something. So we're gonna figure out a better name and re-nickname it, even though when you download it, it'll say something else. But I'm going to stop feeding it bad mojo because of that name. Anyway. So, yeah, please come into that tonight. We'll drop a link up, and we'll help get you started if you're technically challenged. Let's just say it nicely. And we would love to have you chat. It's like an old school chat room where you can chat and make new friends of like-minded people. You're sick of being alone, being the only crazy in the pile of crazy. Come on over to our crazy. It's the best crazy. So we got lots of good friends in there. That being said, I'm going to go around the room for closing statements, and you guys say whatever you want on near-death experiences, Mandela Effect, or anything you heard tonight. So let's start out with Uni Rock. Bring us around.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Doc, for having me in.
Yeah, and if I don't know if you're streaming tonight, but you're welcome to plug that too.
Oh, I was going to. I'm just playing.
Fair enough.
Hi, Ewok and Magi, Vegan, and Penny. Thanks for talking with me. I really appreciate you. And yeah, we're doing the live dive tonight after everyone has a chance to talk in Discord. If you aren't doing anything, come over to Uni Rock. We've got a lot of really cool stuff set up, and the sound effects and our graphics are all pumping perfectly. So hope to see you there. And thanks again, Doc.
Yeah, man. Go ahead, Vegan.
What I'll say is my near-death experience had a profound impact on me personally, which resonated with everyone around me as well. I wasn't really a bad person, but I was a selfish person. I was the kind of person that looked at life as me against the world. You know, I had that kind of mentality, and the only thing I cared about was the things that I care about and the people that I cared about. After my near-death experience, I realized that we're all one and connected to a source. And that realization changed my entire life, you know. So I can't really give you any type of overall enlightenment, because the way it impacted me, gradual. It was a gradual change. It was not, I survived that situation and all of a sudden I'm the vegan warrior. No, I had to grow. It's a continuous growing process. I feel like I've grown from just 2 weeks ago. You know, I feel like I'm in this state of constant growth. In the past, I felt like I had it all figured out. I felt like I knew everything. I felt like I had to defend my mental positions. Now I'm an open book with everything. You know, just this conversation here, I would have never tolerated this conversation in my past. You know, now I'm willing to listen to anyone. Now, I can end with this. I think it was Plato. I'm not sure who said this, but an intelligent person is someone who can engage in any type of discussion without necessarily embracing it. You know, I think that's a sign of true intelligence. And, you know, thank you for letting me on the panel, and I appreciate it.
Well said.
Oh, of course, man. I appreciate you coming in. And Magi?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say, but I'll go back to even though I didn't have one in the physical world, mine was a dream. I still see a lot of connections in what everybody said tonight. Even you, Taryn, from what you were saying yours was. Show was very activating. Honored to be on again. Nice meeting all of you. And that's about it.
Come to Discord.
I'll be there.
Okay, and Ewok.
Same thing,
I'll
really.
give you-
I just kind of want to.
I'll
Sorry.
give you 3 minutes. No. I was going to joke that I was going to give you 3 minutes because you always go over. Go ahead.
I do always go over. I'm trying to be quiet. No, I just want to thank you guys for all sharing your personal experiences. I don't, have my own to share, but everything that you have shared really falls in line with all of my beliefs, and it just further confirms why we're all here, hanging out together, talking together tonight. And for people out there that aren't as sure of this experience that they're experiencing, you're here, you've been through whatever awakening you've been through for a reason, and you might as well embrace it, because we're here to love and experience, and it's much better to be on this side of things than the dark and scary side of things. But both of those sides are real, they exist, and the more you know yourself, the more you love yourself, the more you trust yourself and your connection, that we all obviously share, the happier that you're going to be, and the happier everyone around you is going to be. So thanks for having me on. My channel is new, A Drunken Ewok, easy to find. So please follow me, guys, as I start this journey. And Taryn, thanks again for inviting me on.
Oh, you bet. You could. You've been invited a bunch. It's glad you finally showed up. I need to plug your channel more, so I hope I got the right link. I'll have to check it again. But
I think it's just youtube.com/user/A-Drunken-Ewok. Simple
enough. All right. I will make sure that's linked later into the show description for you guys that don't have a pencil ready. So that's right.
A pencil? What's a pencil?
Pencil. Well, you were saying that nobody has memory enough to remember these things anymore.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, they'll be like, something about something about a brawly Ewok or something. I don't know.
There was a
sort of angry teddy bear or something.
I don't know what it was.
All right. So, Miss Penny, go ahead and give us your parting thoughts.
My parting thoughts. Everybody's kind of really all about, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? What's my purpose? As like there's supposed to be some big skywriting in the sky. Your purpose is to love who God puts in front of you. And especially when those are detestable people, because they're the ones who need it the most. And I think that you'll find if you'll work on that and you'll work on loving those people, doesn't mean you have to agree with them or, spend an exorbitant amount of time with them, but you'll find that what it is that you see in them that repels you is probably what it is in yourself that you need to be working on. And so the more that you kind of work on loving those people and not expecting anything back, it's really going to free you up and liberate you from a lot of disappointment. And I just think that's it. I think that's it. I think if, as you hear these little nudges in your spirit, there's our pastor said something this last week, and he said, if you feel like you're supposed to do something, something comes to you and you think, oh, I should do that, do it within the first 10 minutes. Because if you don't, then it's gone and you haven't acted on that. And if you don't act on it within the first 10 minutes, you probably won't. And so I would just encourage you, if there's something on your spirit and you feel like it's something you're supposed to do in some small way, act on it in the first 10 minutes to get it going. And just watch how that'll manifest in your life. And that's all I've got.
I want to say one thing to that is some of the biggest misery in people's life are when you expect other people to act a certain way. Like you do something nice for them and you expect them to give you something back nice. And what you're going to find out is that is a recipe for disappointment in life. That people, you just need to act who you are and not expect people to react the way you want them to.
Right.
They're not gonna. And
Yeah,
when you let that go, because I had never mind. We'll talk about this in Discord. I was going to get too personal. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate it. Oh, Vegan and Burma, if you're still listening, I don't know if she's awake, but if you guys want to join me on Saturday for the infertility talk, you could add a little bit about maybe some pregnancy massage or a good diet for ladies expecting. I would appreciate that, Vegan. I don't know if you're still listening. He tuned out, didn't he? All right.
Sure.
There he is.
There he is. All right. Yeah, if you want to come talk about some ladies that want to get pregnant, that maybe what kind of diet they should work on. What'll help?
All right.
What they should be eating. All right. That being said, I will see you guys there, and I have to give a special love and thank you to my moderators. Marlena has worked double overtime here tonight, and Jarrell, appreciate you showing up. And I believe Liz was in here for a bit, and Susanna, you were both in here. So I really appreciate that, and Captain Waffles probably made an appearance for 30 seconds. So anyway, and Rusty, welcome to the club. So mods, I'm just going to put blanket mods. If I forgot someone, I'm sorry. Love you guys. Stay positive. Support each other. Be nice to your cat. I'll see you guys in Discord in a few minutes.